black babies ain't being killed, to make sure there's money invested in our community. Well, tell them you're the best racist ever. I mean, and somebody, please do me a favor. Can somebody tell Donald Trump how to be a racist? Because he's not doing a good job.
Yo, Black Lives Matter! Actually, all lives matter. That's racist. Black Lives Matter!
One day later.
That's racist. All lives matter!
There's $24 billion here and there, $500 million there. Some people want to be paid back, and members of the public are wondering, why are we suffering when you have all of this vast wealth? Those are legitimate concerns.
Well, I think you're right about reparations in terms of if people want it, though, what they need to do is you always need to go back to the beginning of a supply chain. Where was the beginning of the supply chain? That was in Africa. And when...
Ooh, that was an... Okay.
You study today's black culture is trash. Ain't nothing positive about black culture. We're not highlighting spelling bee winners. We don't talk about the newest black business that's doing good. When you go on social media, you look at some of the most trending videos and trending topics. It ain't black empowerment. It ain't uplifting black people. When you look at our movies, we ain't got no black heroes. Black culture has black propaganda. Hitler used propaganda to get the Germans to turn on the Jews. We use propaganda for our culture. We propagate pimps, gangsters, killers, womanizers, robbers, deceit, being unfaithful. We got some propaganda, homie, that's brainwashing.
I am a pastor. I'm a man of faith. I have a profound reverence for life. Well, I want to save your life.
I have to respond to this very quick because he told me Black Lives Matter. And if you think about it, Senator, in Atlanta, Georgia, there's more black baby that is aborted than anything. So if Black Lives Matter, why are you not protecting those babies? And instead of aborting those babies, why are you not baptizing those babies?
The Woman King is a modern-day version of D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation. The 1915 silent film was used to promote racism through its false narratives. The Woman King does the same thing. It lies and misappropriates history, leaving the viewer into thinking that the Dahomey tribe eradicated slavery from within their ranks. They did not. Instead, they continued on with impunity. Yet, people still make excuses. Some people refuse to put any blame whatsoever on Africa for their huge part in the slave trade. Now, why is that? Black Lives Matter! Oh, did you see the new Candace Owens film on BLM? Nah, man, you a sellout. Oh, you mean BLM raising nearly $80 million, but almost zero money going to the black community? Building several lavish multi-million-dollar properties in affluent all-white neighborhoods and investing $32 million in Wall Street? You mean that kind of a sellout? Oh, man, Black Lives Matter! Despite Roots' claim that during the heyday of the massive slave trade from West Africa to America, a white man was more likely to develop malaria in Africa than catch slaves. The average life expectancy of a white male in sub-Saharan Africa's interior at the time was less than a year. Men from Europe or the Western Hemisphere arrived on Africa's coast, bought slaves, and fled as quickly as they could. For the slave trade to be possible, they needed massive help from Africans. Because we do not want to be numbers, we will defend the value of the human being. Every single human being, because each of us has a unique genetic code that is unrepeatable. And like it or not, that is sacred. We will defend it. We will defend God, country, and family. For those things that disgust people so much, we will do it to defend our freedom. Because we will never be slaves and simple consumers at the mercy of financial speculators.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
This is what Reagan later meant by "we are a shining city on a hill." All right. I hope everybody can hear me. Welcome to the Kyle Sucks Show, this very, very special edition where we're going to go over the election that's going to happen in a few hours. And guys, I'll tell you right now, I wouldn't say that I'm nervous. I would say that I'm actually very, very anxious, because part of me is looking at this thing like we 100% have this. Then the other side of me is looking at 2020 when I was at my desk on my live stream covering the events, looking at the New York Times ticker as it was ticking over and saying that Trump was going to win. And then there was a water main break 85,000 miles from Fulton County. Big deal. So I'm like, okay, things happen. Fine. But then if I recall correctly, the following call was Arizona. And I believe it was maybe less than an hour later. And what happened? They stopped counting in Arizona. And then they stopped counting in Pennsylvania. And then I knew something was up. And so that's part of me too, doesn't have the confidence in terms of just overall what's happening. But everything being said, this is not 2020. There is no COVID. I am excited because I feel that we are in a position now to literally take this country back. And when I finish talking to you today, I'm going to keep this as long as it needs to be, because I have a ton of information to give you guys, a ton. My first thing is to basically hopefully calm any anxieties. My anxiety comes strictly from past experience from 2020, and that's pretty much it. There's no real data that I can speak to other than the things that we've heard about, where the Democrats do what they do. They try and stuff ballots at the last minute. They try and change laws. They try and do all this stuff at the last minute to overwhelm, discourage, and try to depress the turnout of Republicans on election day, because they know, traditionally speaking, we are the kings and queens of that. Hi, my name is Kyle. Welcome to the Kyle Sucks Show, and we're going to go over my election prediction, final, whatever you want to call it. I like to call it the state of the race, but I don't really know what the state of the race is, other than the fact of the three key indicators that I'm going to cover with you guys today. And then I'm going to go over the election map itself. And I've done this before, so I'm not going to go spend a lot of time on that. For instance, I'm going to share with you this particular spreadsheet that I've covered with you before, where simply all I'm doing is going through the Electoral College and then scoring it based on state and whatnot. And at the end, you come down to a final conclusion. But I'm going to go a little bit more detailed than that. And I'm going to leverage my man, Seth Keshel. I am a subscriber to his Substack, and he's got detailed analysis of all the swing states: North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. He weights it in very, very much detail. So I'll do that at the end. So if you guys don't want to stick around for that, it does get into the minutia a little bit, but it is thorough. And he gives his predictions on those. And it does match up with my spreadsheet here, even though the margins may be off. But it's in terms of that, but it's very close. In fact, Shekel is going to be on the decision desk of Larry Schweikart tomorrow, and I'm going to be using that as part of my live stream. I'm going to be leveraging Larry's decision desk as well as Charlie Kirk's decision desk. So I'll be going back and forth on that. So if you had a question of whether or not I was going to do a live stream tomorrow on election night, I will be doing so. In fact, I'm going to, at some point, I thought I was going to try and do as the polls close, just to do a simulation on that. I'm not going to be able to do that this year, I don't believe, only because, number one, it's not really necessary. But I can, and number two, it's just too much work to do that doesn't give much payoff, because who really cares when the polls close and what you can expect? You'll see when it happens in real time. So I'm not sure how interesting that will be. But I'm going to start off here quickly and just go over a little bit of the things that we can talk about in terms of the election and in terms about the three indicators that we have at our disposal for this particular election right now. And those things pretty much are the polls, as we know about that. The polls are key. However, the polling data many times are fabricated because in many ways the public polls are scams. So before I go any further, let me make sure if I can hear me correctly on this. I checked already, but I don't see if anyone's on the stream already. There are some people on the call. So let me answer some questions first before I get into this, because sometimes things mess up and I don't realize it. People tell me in the chat. Oh, okay. So let's so what you guys can do is I'm going to put stuff up on the screen here. If you have a comment, I'll put it on the screen at the bottom. If you just want to talk to me privately, just put in there with asterisk, in other words, or just say don't display, make public, because if I make it public, then everyone will see it. So just make a note of that. If you don't want to be shown publicly, just make a note. But if not, I'm going to assume that you don't mind. So I'm going to be starting to put some of these comments on the screen here. Rose with Thorns is first. Howdy. I saw you on there. I couldn't talk to you because I was prepping, but thank you for coming on. Looks like Joe Rogan just endorsed Trump. That's amazing. I saw that. Looked like who was on today? Was it? It was Elon Musk, right? I think I saw that dropped a few hours ago. I didn't have a chance to watch that. Okay, so Stephen B. Hey, Steve. Hey, Stephen. How you doing, man? It's been a long time since I talked to you. Do you think Trump will end up with 320 electoral votes? I think it's possible. I do. I'll save that. I'll leave it for here. For now, I'll say it's possible. When we get into the later analysis with Seth's calls, I will say that. But I'm a little hesitant on 320 only because of the Democrat cheat factor. That's what they do. Personally, I think he'll get well over that if everything was to me even Steven. Yes, he would. I'm just concerned of any margins of less than 1. In 2020, Trump lost the election by 40,000 votes, 10,000 in Arizona, 10,000 in Georgia, and 20,000 in Wisconsin. That was it. And of course, he lost Pennsylvania by 80,000 and Michigan by a few. But those 3 states I just mentioned, if that happens again with those kind of margins, I just don't trust them. But fortunately for us, we only need 1. And as you'll see later on, that the Sun Belt looks pretty good for that. So I'm really only concerned about 1 of the so-called blue wall states, and maybe a state that's right below Maryland. Who knows? We'll get into that. Okay, so yeah, low key, this election is giving me anxiety. Absolutely, it's giving me anxiety. I am on a string, and because because of the importance of this election, just because of the severity of this election. If I didn't think that our Constitution would be totally trampled if we lost, I wouldn't be too concerned because the founding fathers were geniuses. They knew how to put stuff in place. We can do stuff like Convention of States if we have to. If it gets that bad, we can do stuff like, the Supreme Court. We can do stuff like judicial appointees. We can do stuff like checks with the Senate versus the House, and and all that sort of stuff. We can create gridlock, for 4 years and then wait and then run again. But with the Democrats and the way they're running now, they do executive orders. They don't care about the law. And worst off, they have the media at their disposal to do their bidding. And that, to me, is the most dangerous part of all this. It's the complicity with the media, with the Democrat Party. Not only that, but also big pharma, big ag, and all that stuff too. So we need some regulation in that area. And as a Republican, or as a former Republican who's an independent who's voting Republican, I can't even believe that I'm saying I want more regulation. But I think we do need reform when it comes to media. We need reform when it comes to especially entities such as YouTube and, let's say, not X is fine, but other social media outlets like Meta and whatnot. Are you a social media site or are you a journalist? Are you doing news? Which is it? They're playing both sides, and I think the regulation needs to be happening there. Not to mention the collusion with that as well. It's almost like a trust system that happened back in the in Teddy Roosevelt days, and so that has to be broken up some kind of way. So, long story. Okay, thank you, Rose. Thank you for that. So I'll leave that there, and thank you very much for that. All right, so let's jump into. Let me see. What I was going to do. Let's jump into the. Oh yeah, let's just jump into the aspects of the election right now, and how I can kind of ease some of these nerves that are going on. So the first thing we do is we look at the polls, because the polls are something that, if done right, can be a useful tool. But we also have something called the voter registration and identification trends. And what's key about that is that with early voting, as of right now, actually, I think I have a stat right here for you guys. The early voting, we've actually voted, I think over half the country has voted right now, I believe. If I can find this particular one. Nope, that's not it. We'll just keep going. But the point is that nearly half the country has already voted. And the good thing about that is many states register or let people know who voted by party. Now, states like Georgia don't allow that, so you have to kind of get it a different way. But states like Pennsylvania let you know who voted by party. And across the board, when I've seen from the various states that have early voting, that especially the ones that allow for you to have by party, every single state that I've seen, without question, is Republicans are up and Democrats are down. Now, depending on the state, it may, like Virginia, for instance, even though the Democrats are down and the Republicans are up, it's still not enough to put the Republicans above that number, but the trend is still the same across all states. We're seeing it in Oregon as well. And that's the key thing. The other thing here is the identification trends, because Gallup polling is one of the, it's pretty much Gallup poll is pretty much the Rolls Royce, at least it has been traditionally, of polling. And just this year, Gallup forecast there will be an R+2 electorate, which means that they think that for the first time in history, well, at least first time that they've been recording, that there are going to be more Republicans that are going to be voting than Democrats by a margin of 2%. That's the popular vote. So if Gallup is correct, that's going to give us the popular vote. Now, you may say, Kyle, well, why is that a big deal? It's just a poll. Well, if you go back to the past three elections, going back to 2008, 12, and 16, no, not 8, 12, 16, and 20, each of those elections were within 2 points or 1 point of the Gallup prediction. So let's say, and I'm doing this from memory because I hadn't seen this in a while, but let's take 2020, where Joe Biden won by, was that 5% or 4%, 4.1%. The Gallup poll that year said that there was going to be 5 point something percent more Democrats voting in 2020 than Republicans. So they're not giving a poll. They're just saying how many people per party are going to be voting. And they were off by like 1%. In 2016, they had predicted Hillary would win by, I think, 4%. And then she won the popular vote by 3.6%. So as that's still within a point. And then you go back one more year, I think, as well. That also holds true as well there. In 2000, would that be 12, I guess? Same thing there. And so, but here's the thing. For the first time ever, there's an R+2 margin. And at one point, the Gallup had an R+7 model, but the one right before the election was 2. So it's like a rolling sort of average. So it averages all out from whatever it is, end up fitting into around 2% as the final number. Still, that's fantastic. In fact, if Gallup had Trump, -3. In other words, 3% more Democrats running or voting for president over Republicans, that still would have been good. It would have meant that probably Trump would have lost the popular vote, but he doesn't need to win the popular vote because our founding fathers were absolutely geniuses in determining that electoral college is a good way to go. It gets better representation for smaller states against states that are misrepresented because they don't have the population, but it keeps the culture intact. So you don't have to worry about a small town in Montana have to be affected by liberals in San Francisco and in New Jersey. They have their own representation because the Electoral College gives them that power based on the number of congressional seats that they have, as well as the 2 senators that they have. So that gives them that power as well. So it's a really good system. And contrary to popular belief, there hasn't been many presidents that have won the presidency without winning the popular vote. Recently, because we're so partisan, it's happened. If I go off memory, I think that'll be Trump. I think Bush in 2000, as we know about that one. See, HW in 2000. I'm sorry, was it HW was help me out. 88. Yeah, 88. He won the popular vote. And of course, Reagan. So yeah, it's actually pretty rare. I'm not sure if Kennedy won the popular vote or not, but it's only happened a few times. And here's the funny thing. I'm going to go off on a tangent here a little bit because the Democrats love to talk about how things aren't working out for them and how they want to, expand, or they want to get rid of the Electoral College in favor of the popular vote. Well, they're only saying that because they're winning the popular vote and losing the election. Well, I'm going to say here right now, when Trump wins the popular vote, I don't think they're going to be talking about getting rid of the Electoral College. In fact, they're going to say, you know what? The founders were right. We should make sure we have an Electoral College because just like the filibuster. The filibuster was working fine with them back in the day when they had Senator Warren and his cronies doing whatever they wanted to do. That was fine because they had the majority. But now, it's closer. It goes back and forth. Now they want the filibuster because if you're in the minority, you want some sort of extra power. Supreme Court. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. So the Supreme Court with the Warren courts and so forth, those guys were basically using the Supreme Court because they had the majority and passing laws, whatever, doing stuff like that. But that was in the Democrats' favor. But then you had Reagan come on, you had Trump come on, you had other conservative justices come on. And next thing you know, now they're mad and they want to stack the court. They only care about the system or the institutions that we have in place as long as they're benefiting them. If they're not benefiting them, they want to change it because they're all about keeping power for themselves at our expense. Anyway, I digress. All right, so let's just jump into the election prediction, and I'll just talk on top of my head because I've done this a few times, so I kind of know where I'm going. So let me just share this quickly here, and I'm going to go over this real quickly, and I should only probably cover the swing states, but this is what we're looking at right here. And let me just scroll down here. So if we stop to the top here, we have Minnesota. What I have, not that Minnesota. So let's go to the very top. Okay, it's sorted by. No, this isn't sorted right, guys. I apologize. Oh, it's the wrong one. This is from September. Let me go to the most current one. There we go. All right. So essentially what I have here is from the top to the bottom, Washington State is probably going to be this. I can sort this by. Let me sort this, guys. No, I'll keep it here. So Washington, Oregon, California, Colorado, Illinois, Vermont, New Jersey, DC, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine Maine 1st District, Maryland, Delaware, and New York. So if we come into, and let me bring this up. That's good there. So let's just color these in. Pretty much know these by heart by now. I'm not even going to do. I'm going to include leaners, which basically means I'm not going to do any margins like likely or whatever. No, this is just by the final result. New York, unfortunately, New York would be close actually this year. I think it'd be closer. I think it'd be within 10 points, I believe. New Hampshire, I believe. Well, that's going to be. We'll save that one. We'll save Maine for now, and we'll give them New Mexico. That's going to be a tough one. And Illinois, and 191. Let's change this to Harris. So right now, I think this is going to be Kamala's floor. So I don't think she's going to do any worse than 191. And if you guys are just joining and you don't understand what's going on with this Electoral College, I'll explain it again because sometimes people don't understand what's going on. I have people from different parts of the world chiming in. I know I have people from Europe coming in, and I'll have a person from Europe coming in to our live stream tomorrow as well. He'll be up 2-3 o'clock in the morning with us, my friend Ethan. And I explained this to him. He wasn't quite sure what I was talking about. But if you look at this map here, for people who don't understand, I'll just go over real quickly what the Electoral College map means. So what you'll see here is you'll see a state. We have 50 states. And we have one district of Columbia, which is a city, which is nation's capital. That is a special case. It's not a state, but it does have Electoral College representation. So we'll skip that for now, but I will go over these real quickly. When you see a number by, let's take Texas, for example. If you see that number 40, just subtract 2 from that. That will give you the number of congressional districts that you have. And that counts for Electoral College votes. So when you go to the polls tomorrow, if you've already done it in the past, over the past few weeks, when you go to the ballot and you circle in Trump on your ballot, you're not voting for Trump. You're casting your ballot to a person within your state, in your party, to take the popular vote of your state with your vote and everyone else who votes for Trump, to take those votes and cast them when they go to DC for the certification vote. So you're saying, okay, Mr. Representative, please take my votes and pull it in with everyone else in my state and take that and go to DC and cast those votes for me for Trump. So you're voting for Trump, but you're voting for a person to vote for Trump for you. It's a proxy almost. And the bigger the state, the more of those people you have. Texas has 38 because if you take away the 2 for the senators, you get 38 districts. And they split the states up based on population. And that's how it works. Every 10 years, we do a census, which means we take a poll and we find out how many people are in our country. And then we sort it, information is used for various things. And from that information, we determine how many congressional seats every state gets. Because if everyone moves out of a state, then guess what? You're going to lose Electoral College votes. If more people come in, you're going to gain every 10 years, you'll gain. So that's where it comes from. And you have to get to 270. That's the magic number to win the presidency. So when that happens in DC in January, people take every single state. What happens is every single state has a meeting at the state capitol. And they say, okay, how many votes do we have for Trump? We have, let's say, keep the math easy. We have 1 million. How many do we have for Kamala? We have 3. Okay, well, the 1 million is greater than 3. So we're going to cast all our votes to DC for Trump. That's how it works. Anyway, so I think that's where her floor is right now. But we're going to keep going. And I'm going to come down to, let's see, I think I have this Montana here. So I'm going to go through the ones that I know are absolutely safe, that are easy, that are not swing states. So we'll just go through these real quick. I'm not going to give any margins, but if you go back to some other videos, you'll see what I had for margins in terms of how much these are going to be won by. It's pretty straightforward. So all these states out here are going to be going for Trump, no problem. We'll hold off on Iowa for a second here because there's a poll that came out that I want to talk about. All these. I think we'll keep. Well, okay. Now I'm not gonna. Well, Maine District 2 is a special district. So some states like Maine and Nebraska, they split their electoral college votes. It's not winner take all. You can get a part of it, and so we're just gonna do this. I'm not sure if he'll win Nebraska 2 either, but we're just getting the entire state. But for sure, he'll win Maine 2. The rest will probably go Democrats. So we'll go ahead and put him in now just for the heck of it. I'm not sure he can carry those other ones. So right now we have Trump at 140 and Harris at 194. Is there any states I'm missing? Texas. And I'm just saying Florida, guys. I mean, it's not a swing state. And North Carolina is not a swing state. But I'm gonna cover it anyway as a swing state later. But in the shekel piece portion, when we get into all the swing states together. But technically, North Carolina is not a swing state. But I'm bringing it in simply because of the controversy that's coming out about Mark Robinson, which I think he's got a really good shot at winning. I'll explain that as well a little bit later. Or you can go to our locals and check out an article I posted today about a new Rasmussen poll that came out that had him at 9 points behind, which means that Mark is actually running ahead of Forrest, who ran for governor back in 2020. He's running ahead of him, actually, and Stein is actually running behind Cooper. So, there's a big miss in North Carolina, mainly because they don't understand how to poll the state, because North Carolina is traditionally Democrat, and many people still have not changed their registration from D to R, but they vote R, which makes them very, very difficult to poll. Because if you're going off early voting numbers and you see a bunch of Democrats registered and voted, well, you would think that's good for Democrats. Well, not so much if they're voting for Republicans. And you don't know that unless you do exit polling, and even exit polling isn't accurate, especially when you have a candidate like Trump, who people will lie to you saying, well, yeah, I voted for someone else, but voted for Trump because they didn't want to go on record as saying that they support Trump. Alaska too will go, and there you go, Hawaii. So her floor is 198 because I forgot Hawaii, and Alaska will go as well. I think that looks pretty good. So that's what we have. That the election's going to come down to these states. I take Georgia off for a second here, guys. Sorry about that. So that looks pretty good. All right. So let me see what else I have here. Let me see if there's any questions before I go further. Nicholas Little says, if Trump wins, the meltdowns from the media and the left will be fun to watch. Absolutely. You know what's interesting, Nicholas, is that in 2016, there was a bunch of people who said that Trump wasn't going to win. He couldn't win. It's impossible. And I'm sure you've seen the videos, which basically have people saying, he can't win. He can't win. It goes on and on and on. Comedians, newscasters, politicians, everyone. And just watching that happen and then seeing him win was a very satisfying thing. In fact, when Trump won in 2016, you guys think I'm crazy, but I downloaded from YouTube every single live stream that I could find of that entire event. Everyone I could find. Other one I missed was the Washington Post, who didn't post theirs after the fact. They actually posted live, but they didn't have it in archive. So I missed that one. But if anyone has the Washington Post live stream from 2016, I would love to have that. But just seeing everyone's reaction right around 10 o'clock was just absolutely golden. And so you're right. So, and now we're 8 years later. Is that right? Yeah. It sounds like a long time ago. Yeah. 8 years later. And now technology is different. X is on our side now. And we're not going to get censored when we go out there. And this technology has advanced so much since then. There's a lot more opportunity to do more trolling. I'm not going to be too much into the trolling because even though I'm going to be tempted to, I probably won't. But I will be reading a lot of things, and I will be up really late on Wednesday morning, of course. Because I believe after you hear what I have to say about this, I think you will agree that this will probably get called before I would say probably 2:00 a.m. Eastern time, only because that's what got called in 16. I think the outlets will hold back as much as they can. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself, but I think it will get called before 2. But the important thing is this, guys, we're going to have to vote. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through some talking points here just to get into some of this, because I don't want to sound too confident, but I do want to make sure that everyone knows that we're in good shape as long as we come out and vote at the levels that we voted in 2020, which, by the way, our early voting is approaching 2020 numbers, or it's over now. It came close to topping 2020. And to give you some perspective on that, 2020 was a special kind of election because people were scared to go outside the house. And you had a lot of people who had never voted before. They call these people low propensity voters or low prop voters. There's low prop and then there's no prop. No prop means you have not voted in any election in the past 4 cycles, which is basically 8 years, which means they count midterms as well. Or if you're a low prop, you voted 1 time in the past 8 years. And these people are the ones who are really just hard for that very reason. They're very difficult to get to the polls. But when they had stuff like, let's say, ballot harvesting, where you can sit in your apartment, chill, and someone knocks on your door and asks you, did you vote? You say no. They give you a ballot, you fill it out, they take the ballot from you and take it to the polling place. In some states, that's illegal. And the Democrats take these laws and these regulations and these things and find a way to bend it so that it works for them. And so because of COVID was out, they could go out and do these mass campaigns where they do what they call knock and grab. They knock on the door and they grab the dude. And well, in this case, ballot harvesting, they don't grab you, but they grab the ballot. But on day of election, they grab you and pull you to the polls and make you vote. So, and because COVID, people were scared to get out the house because the media did such a fantastic job of telling everyone that if you breathed outside of a mask, that you would die. Then people were requesting mail-ins left and right, and it worked to their advantage. But we don't have that this time. So I talked about polling. I talked about how polling can be flawed because polling results can lack statistical variation, despite usually being 95% confidence level. In other words, polls have something called a margin of error, and when polling places go out and call someone to ask them what their thoughts were in terms of how are they going to vote. Are you going to vote for Trump or are you going to vote for Kamala? And there's a lot of nuance in that because the way the polling questions is asked sometimes affects it. Who the candidate is affects it because they may not want to say, well, I'm voting for Trump. And sometimes the pollster, if they're dishonest, they will say, well, if Trump wasn't such a jerk, would you vote for Kamala instead? That kind of thing, right? And then they'll say, well, yeah, I vote for Kamala, and then they'll count that as a Kamala vote. So some polls just are dishonest, and some polls are scams. Some public polls, the main job for them to do is twofold. Number one is to raise money for candidates and to raise money, for themselves. Because if John Doe announces in, let's say, May of last year, he's going to run. So as a pollster, if I was dishonest pollster, I would go out, I'd find me a poll that benefits John. That shows that John's up by 15 points over his opponent. So then I have this poll that's got a sample size and whatever it is. In this case back then, it's usually registered voters and not likely voters, which means it's even further from being accurate, but it doesn't matter. They go to John and say, hey, I got this poll of 50 people that say they're going to vote for you and you're up by 15 points. And John says, fine, I'll pay for that. And he buys the poll and then he can use, or he gets in the poll and he uses that poll to get sponsors and donors to jump onto his campaign and, come along because everyone wants to be part of a winner. It's a racket. But what happens is if that pollster who was dishonest continues on being dishonest and keeps the margins high, eventually they're going to get found out because some other pollsters are going to be like, look, John's actually, he's either even or he's behind. So what they'll do is they'll say, well, if my competitor is off, is off by 10 points and I'm, up 11, maybe we should get together and come together so we can actually save the industry. Because if the polls are not trusted, everyone loses money. So they do something called herding, and this is part 2. So toward the end, they will get their polls closer to an accurate model, accurate methodology, so that they can save face when they're wrong. And that's what polls do. Now, internal polling is different because it's prudent for the internal pollster to be accurate because it's a private poll that only goes to the campaign mostly, and then that's used for planning to determine how we're going to do marketing, it's going to determine who we're going to actually talk to when we go out. So that's what's going on there. The underlying trends in voter registration, looking right now is that Republican enthusiasm is extremely high, and that because the fact that we have a candidate in Kamala Harris who refuses to tell anyone what she believes, what she wants to do, who has gone back on everything she said about things that are popular and important to the average voter. The top 3 things are immigration, the economy, and crime. And somewhere in there is abortion, but it's down the list. And so she said things against those top 3 things, or she's been in a position where she's done nothing over those top 3 things. She was the border czar, did nothing for the border. In fact, the border got worse. She had these tie-breaking votes that they wouldn't be so proud of her, but these tie-breaking votes were for stuff like the Inflation Act that made inflation go through the roof. Or when it comes to crime, everyone knows that the Democrats just are notorious for coming on the side of the victim, and coming on the side of the criminal and not so much on the side of the victim. I'm not sure what that's about, but in California, I believe it was when essentially you could steal up to X number of dollars and you're fine. It's just, or just releasing criminals after doing horrible things, slap on the wrist, but yet an honest citizen will be thrown in jail for jaywalking. It's a two-tier system that people don't like, and they understand that the Democrat Party is on the wrong side of those issues. So that's one of the reasons why Kamala Harris is so unpopular. Not only that, she's a terrible character in terms of a terrible candidate in terms of her ability to articulate anything on the fly. She notoriously stumbles on herself if the teleprompter fails. She is obviously over her head. She gets over prepared for things that she shouldn't be over prepared for. Why even be taking 2 days off to have a Brett Baer interview, and then when you do so, come late and then cut it off early? And people see through all that. They see through her inauthenticity. She's inauthentic. People know that. And so she is someone who shouldn't even been in office, at least in this position to begin with, because they essentially took Joe Biden out of the process and put her in, bypassing all the laws within the Democrat National Convention. Was it an illegal thing they did? I don't think so, because the party can essentially do what they want, but I'm pretty sure they violated their own bylaws. But nevertheless, there was no primary. She got 0 votes. They threw her in there. She was a DEI hire, a diversity, equity, inclusive hire, and it shows. But yet, because the media is still carrying her water, she could very well still win this thing. And the fact that it's so close, the fact that a candidate like her is so close, a candidate like her who is an ultra Marxist, whose father was a Marxist, and the fact that what she said through her entire career as a senator, the most liberal senator in all of Congress, is this close to sitting in the Oval Office, something is wrong. And the founding fathers never wanted this to be a thing. And I mean, not that that ever couldn't happen, because sure, I mean, if you're American, you can, no matter what you think, you can get in. But it goes more than just a Marxist becoming president. It goes to the fact that she's able to get this far, and that goes to the fact that we don't learn anything in our schools. It's been taken over and infiltrated by a communist Marxist agenda, a secular humanist worldview agenda, a globalist worldview agenda, where individual liberties are not a big thing. In fact, you should abdicate your rights to the state because the state knows better than you do. That was never the part of the Constitution or the founding fathers wanted in terms of the foundation of this country. It was based on biblical principles, a Christian worldview. It was a system built on James Otis' philosophy of a man's castle. All of our laws are based on that premise, a man's castle. In fact, John Adams himself said that was why we went to war. Ultimately, it was not about the taxes. That was just the second or third tier from the man's castle. And if you know what that means, it essentially means that as a human being, you have the rights to have a home. You have the right to that home and that land, that property, and more importantly, you have the right. Not only are you right, you have a duty to protect your home and everything inside of it. All the walls, the ceiling, the land, and everything and everyone inside of it, to the death. I say this example from time to time that it looks like this. So if my friend John owes me $5 and I'm in a public square and I say, tell everyone who's there, witnesses everywhere, I owe John, let's say he owes me $5. So I'll do it this way. I say I owe John $5. I say, everyone, I owe John $5. And John says, yes, you do. You owe me $5. And everyone sees it. Everyone knows it. Okay, that's public. So I go to John's house to pay him his $5. But guess what? He's not home, but the door's wide open. Nobody's in the house. Wife's gone, whatever. But the entire house is open. The door's open. And there's a table on the corner. All I have to do is walk in there and put $5 on the table. I am not allowed to do that because John's house is his castle. And it's that framework that we built our entire Western civilization. Because if I can defend my home to the death with weapons and have the right to do that, then other people have those same rights when they have a town or a city or a county or a state or a country. It's all based on that foundation, on those laws of a man's castle. And taxes goes on top of that. Everything's built on top of that. And so that's one thing that the Democrats don't understand. Private property is something that they do not want. And that's straight out of Karl Marx's playbook. So anyway, I know I got somewhere, but I just want to say that because I think that's important for people to understand the foundations. That this stuff just doesn't come out of nowhere. This has been going on for decades. No, I won't say centuries, but I would say at least 100 years, maybe further back. Okay, what else? So I did a video today. I'm not going to play it here. I may play it on one segment, but I did a video today. It's about 7 minutes long. I'm basically framing the actual election similarly to what Abraham Lincoln had to go through when he was trying to be reelected. And Abraham Lincoln was elected initially in 1861, and he went to the Civil War. It was a brutal war, and he ended up coming up for reelection in November of 1864. Now, at the time, in 1864, it was a very, very difficult time for the country. The people just didn't know where we're headed, and they were tired of the amount of casualties that was going on, and they wanted the war to stop. There was an anti-war faction called Copperheads who said, "You know what? I'll get back to the map in a second." The anti-war Democrats and whoever they were, the Copperheads, they wanted to get him out of office because they thought this was too much of a price to pay for this. So they decided to run a guy by the name of McClellan after him. He was a general, actually, George McClellan. He ran against him in 1864, and Lincoln felt that he was going to lose. And had Lincoln lost that particular, let me get rid of this comment here. If Lincoln had lost that particular election, then George McClellan was running on the premise of, I'm going to sue for peace. So if George McClellan wins the election in 1864, we literally have two different countries. So this video that I did goes through that, and I basically compare what's going on right now. That I feel that if for some reason Trump were to lose this election, or we were to lose this election, then we would no longer have a country. Because everything we have in place now, everything's in place now for total chaos, because there's no thought at all about adhering to the Constitution at all. We have Supreme Court justices who have no idea about original intent at all. Mayo Samore and this new Jackson woman, she's horrible. And the dissensions on some of these votes, you look at them, you just see these guys are totally clueless as to what, this is about. The Constitution is not some sort of document that's interpreted itself throughout time. It's not this flowing, changing document. No, it's a document basically says, what did I intend when I actually made it? And so I've given classes, I've given several, where we go over this called Biblical Citizenship in Modern America. We talk about this in this class, about the Constitution as amended. So we see the Constitution on one side, but then we see how it was amended. So we have an updated version of it. And even some of the amendments, like the federal income tax, should never have been in there. So I'm going off on a tangent here, but the point is, they don't even go off on any of this stuff. And that's what I think we would lose. And on top of all that, I think the worst part of this is we have a complicit media who will gaslight, lie, steal, cheat for them without calling them on anything. President Trump got, I think, was it 85% negative coverage or 90% negative? No, like 95% negative coverage. And Kamala got 83% positive coverage. How was that journalistic? When you have media outlets blatantly calling Trump Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, when their own policies, their own tactics are indicative of those very things. They blame Trump for saying he's going to put his political enemies in jail. Okay, he says it, but what did they do? Did Trump put Hillary Clinton in jail? He said it, but did he do it? He didn't. And it's just this thing where the Democrats, the Marxists, these guys, they always do, they project onto us what they're already doing or planning on doing. And so there's that. Let's go back to my notes here, see if I don't miss anything. So let's take a look at some of these. Let's go through some of these slides here that I have, because it's interesting. Let's just go through the slides. I read them, and this will cover most of what I need to talk about, even without going through my notes. I got so much stuff to talk about, but I want to at least go through these. I'll go through them one by one. I'll just read them off to you, and we'll talk about them. All right, so let's look at the national polls. So here we have Latinx adjacent Dr. PhD says, I will plant a flag too. National polls are usually far closer to the right than state polls. This has been true for the last 5 presidential elections. National polls resoundingly say Harris will lose and Trump may win as PV means I'm sorry. I'm not sure what PV means right now. I'm losing my train of thought. Models say it's fake. We will see. After the elections, there are often misconceptions and distortions that arise about the polls and models said. So I want to plant a flag right now before we know the results. So essentially, national polls are more accurate by and large than a state poll. And I guess it's pretty easy to find out for that reason, because you're asking a person, are you voting for A, are you voting for B? A generic type of deal. States are a little bit are different because there's different things in each state. For instance, in Pennsylvania, the issues may be dealing with coal mining. So I'm going to be gravitating to a candidate who's strong on coal. Or if you're in North Carolina, you may like someone who is more cosmopolitan. If you're, on the eastern part of the country, state, you may pull for a different candidate because your interests are different because of where you live. But generically speaking, across the entire country, it tends to balance itself out because people are looking at it from a generic standpoint. It all balances itself out just off of the genericness of that particular question. So I'll show you this next poll here. So this is the Real Clear Politics average here. Real Clear Politics is a aggregate site that essentially goes out and gives all the polls that they deem credible. And some of these polls just suck straight up. Like Marist, if it's in there, Morning Consult, that's garbage. The best polls in here right now are probably going to be your TIP and your Rasmussen. And that's pretty much about it. They used to have Trafficker Group in there. They used to have Atlas Intel's in there too, but they haven't had a poll recently. So, and these polls roll off. So if you don't have a poll within 3 weeks, you'll roll off. There it is, Atlas. Atlas Intel is very good. That's the most accurate poll for the past 2 cycles, 22 and 20. So they're really good. They have Trump at a +2 national. And just to give you guys an idea, Trump never led a national poll in 2016, not a major one. I think he may have had a tip poll that he was ahead in at one point in time, but he never, ever led the popular vote in any of these RCP aggregate polls. In fact, Trump has never been more popular, not to mention his polling, his favorabilities as well. And Kamala is just about as unfavorable and unpopular as Biden. And I believe her policies are even less popular than Biden. So all of this spells pretty bad news for her. So here's AUNG. He states that the race T-1, that Trump boasts a 0.1 lead. In 2020, the average was biased for Biden by 2.4 points, and in 2016, biased for Clinton by 1.1 point. If a similar bias exists, it'll be by +1 national public. I'm sorry, I'm not knowing what these abbreviations are. At a minimum, which would translate into a 312 electoral. Why am I not? I can't think today, guys. What does EV mean? Win by Trump. Please help me out in the comments here. I am having a hard time thinking. I got too much in my mind right now. So comment what EV means, what MPV means. That'd be fantastic. So I won't have to be stammering over that. Election. I'm thinking election day win, but it's not EV. I'm not sure what that is. Now or never, go vote. Here's Gallup. I mentioned that before. Gallup poll. I said before that for the first time they had a R+2 electorate, which had never happened before. It's been extremely accurate since 2004. If Trump trends hold, that forecasts a 10-point win for Florida, Texas, Ohio, in Iowa, which we'll get to in a second, a 5-point win for Trump in North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, 3-point wins in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and close races within 2 either way in Maine, New Hampshire, and Minnesota. So essentially what they're saying here is that voter registration and voter identity is one of the most accurate ways to determine a popular vote, because if you have more people in a party that are voting, then that party has a better chance of winning. I mean, that makes sense. The only thing you would have a problem with is one party switching parties and voting for the other party, or you don't get as many as the independents as you would like. But by and large, if you have more Republicans voting in an election, the chances of them winning are more. Seems pretty simple to me. So polling in terms of other things aren't quite as accurate. And Gallup does a really good job of polling in that way. And so let's just go back to our map here. And let's just fill this stuff in. I mean, nothing I say here is going to be a shock to anybody. So I'm just go through the states here. And again, I will cover this in more detail in the next segment as I go through each of these models for North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and we'll talk about Iowa as well. But for now, let's just start with the state that I feel the most comfortable with, and that would be Arizona. Partially because Arizona is always tend to be a conservative Republican state. It's McCainville, it's Goldwater territory, but it's more establishment based. But Trump has done a really good job in Arizona with dealing with the border issue. It shares a huge border. In fact, it's got the biggest border other than Texas. And just seeing a lot of issues there. And Maricopa County, which is where Phoenix is, that's becoming more Republican. And the state has just changed so much in 4 years. And Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, has done a fantastic job of getting the vote out and getting people working and excited and galvanized. And he had a huge event there with RFK Jr. And so Arizona, let me look at my numbers here in Arizona. I think I have that at, actually I had Georgia. I had Florida as a higher rate, but I don't consider Florida a popular. Let me show you my numbers here real quick. I'll show you that real quick so you can just see this. So here's my Electoral College right now. So I have right now Florida is as safe. I changed it from swing state to a safe state, just because I think we'll get to Florida in a second, but it's fantastic. And Arizona, I guess Arizona and Georgia, I feel equally safe about. But for those reasons, it's just great. Georgia as well. Let's go to Georgia. And Georgia is one that I think is probably the next best one in terms of us getting. So let's color that in. And there's some shenanigans going on in Georgia. But there's a big difference between Georgia in 2024 than, let's say, Georgia in 2020. First of all, in 2020, we had a whole different electorate. Not only did we have the COVID, we had a presidential race, of course, but we had an incumbent president, which is, is a little different than it is now. But even though really we have two incumbents, if you really want to look at it, but really the structure of Georgia was a lot different because you had two senatorial races going down there. You had two huge Democrat conglomerates down there. You had the Stacey Abrams conglomerate down there. You had the Warnock conglomerate down there going against Herschel Walker. Tons of money down there. And you had Atlanta, which is, of course, you have your highly Black populated and influential with the schools that are there, Spelman, Morehouse, Morris Brown, those guys. A very, very Democrat culture in that way. And so, but now you don't have any of that. You don't have any of that. That's all we have the Black College, of course, but you don't have George Floyd there either. Remember, George Floyd happened back in May of that year. And people forget that. I mean, that was crazy. And then you had COVID. So you have people who are jacked up and amped up about George Floyd, and they can't get out, so they're going to get the ballot out because, it's easier for them. They don't have to get out of the bed. They can just, mail it. And so it's different. Georgia's different now. And they've added a lot more voter integrity laws in place. The governor seems to be a lot more, on board now in helping us win this state. And so, so Georgia, I feel second best about. Arizona as well. And let's move over to, let's go to Iowa real quick. Just go to Iowa because it's ridiculous that we're even talking about this. This pollster in Iowa, I mean, she had this ridiculously stupid poll. So let me just pull up this particular article and just go through it real quickly. I'm not gonna go through it too tough because it's really a stupid thing to think about Iowa going for Kamala. It's ridiculous. So this is from Seth Shekels. I'm saying his name wrong. Keshel, maybe that's right. He says here, first and foremost, can you guys see that? Yeah, you can see it. He says, first and foremost, the Democrats have lost more than 203,000 active registrations, including many to a voter roll purge that also clipped Republicans, but at much reduced rates. So what he's saying here is that there's something called, when you register to vote, if you live at address ABC, you vote. 4 years later, you move. Now you're at XYZ address. Well, you're supposed to change that address and when you vote again, they would ask you, did your address change, whatever. Some states are more strict on that. But let's say you leave the state entirely. You can no longer vote in that state now, and you should be pulled off of that roll. If you pass away, many other things. If you haven't voted in X number of years, you should roll off. And when they mean purging these rolls, they mean making the rolls more accurate, getting rid of people who died, because Democrats love to make sure that people vote when they're dead. If you saw the movie Vindicating Trump with Dinesh D'Souza, he mentioned a new strategy that they're trying to do this time around, where basically they're going to college campuses. And I'll use myself for example. If I am in, let's say, North Carolina, I live in Maryland, and I'm on campus. It's, let's say, November. I'm still going to have to vote. So what I'll do is I'll request an absentee ballot from the state of Maryland. They'll mail it to my dorm. I'll fill it out. I'll mail it back, and they'll count my vote. Well, what about states that actually register you as a college student living in North Carolina? Even though my residence is technically in Maryland, but I also have a temporary residence in my dorm in North Carolina. So what Democrats were doing was they were finding these students that had these, out of state, situations, and they would get ballots for these students. And these students didn't even know they had a ballot. So they would register them and then vote for them. So they would essentially vote twice. I'd vote consciously by mail in Maryland, but I would unknowingly vote in North Carolina because no one told me that my identity was being essentially stolen. So voter rolls do that. It helps produce fraud. He goes on to say, the results have been a major shift towards the GOP. So when the voter rolls are being purged, it helps the GOP. With the state moving from a R+1 in active registrations to an R+10 today. So in other words, for the last election, they were at 0.1. Now they're 10 times bigger in terms of Republicans than they were the last time. And if you look at the Gallup poll, that's all you got to know. There's nothing, if you don't read anything else in this particular poll, that's all you got to know, because as we mentioned before, that voter identity is the biggest indicator of election accuracy. So let's just read this one thing here. I highlighted this. It says, to believe Iowa is sailing left, let alone as left as Seltzer. Seltzer is this poller. She's an independent pollster. She's been saying that she's the best Iowa pollster, the best pollster in the country, and blah 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 blah. And she's not. The best pollster in the country, in my opinion, is Rich Barris of Big Data Polling or People's Pundit. He's fantastic. He was within a few micro points, decimal points of being more accurate than Atlas Intel. So he's an extremely good pollster. He doesn't care. He doesn't want to hurt your feelings, but he will. If he says Trump's going to lose, he'll say it. He won't try and shill just because he feels like, you'll get upset. He's accurate because his integrity and his polling is his business. Accuracy is his business, which is why some of these bigger polls, which is another reason why they're a scam, is because they're controlled by big media outlets. I mean, I'm not saying this is true, but I'm just saying, let's say CNN owns they do own a poll actually. But if you have a MSNBC, if they had a poll, do you think that poll would have Trump anywhere near winning or close or anything? No. This is built-in bias. It's baked in. So it wouldn't happen. So, but because they have money outside of polling, it's similarly to, I know I'm going around the bush here, but this is important to understand. There's a reason why Nintendo is very, very good at video games. I mean, extremely good. I mean, not only good, but innovative. I mean, new things have never been done before. Versus, let's say, Xbox, which is Microsoft, or Sony, which is PlayStation. Well, the last time I checked, Sony does other things besides gaming systems. The last time I checked, Xbox, who's owned by Microsoft has other things bringing in money other than gaming systems. And lastly, the last time I checked, Nintendo only does games. So who do you think is going to be more innovative? Who do you think is going to be the best at what they do? It's that simple. And so enough for Iowa. I'm done with this. It never should have been an issue. In fact, she won by getting me to spend 5 minutes talking about this crap. So Iowa is absolutely going to be. In fact, let me look at my model here. Show you what my model looked like. So Iowa, I had Iowa at. I had winning that by. Let me unhide these. Can I unhide this? I can show all the numbers if I wanted to, but I can't unhide. I can't unhide it. Anyway, I have Iowa at 12. So that's safe. Okay, so where are we? Let's get rid of that. Where were we before? Let's go back to. Let me move this. Let me see if there's any questions in the chats, and I'll see the 7 new chats. Let me see here. Oh, Mark's here. All right, my man Mark is here. All right, let's come up here. Yeah, Michigan. Okay, that's a good point. Michigan is going of all the swing states. Michigan is going to be your most corrupt swing state, bar none. I'll leave it at that. So, if Michigan, like I said in the beginning of this feed, if Michigan is under 1 point, just consider that lost. Just consider we have to win by 3 or 4 points in these swing states to have a certainty that they're going to win it. Because they're going to look for anything. That's part of the strategy, I believe, is to lawyer up and to go in these areas that they feel they have an opportunity to call fraud. And I'm getting ahead of myself here, but the only way they can really not certify the vote in January of next year is if there's fraud. And when 2020 happened, I mentioned this thing over and over again. I don't have it in front of me, but it's a Supreme Court case, I believe, from the 1800s. And it basically says that to the effect that if it's fraudulent, it's inaccurate. It cannot be counted. I forget the word I'm looking for. So if they can prove it's fraud, it never happened. And so Trump was trying to do that. And he would get it to a district court, but he didn't have standing. So the evidence was never, ever heard. Anyone who says, well, I'll stop here. I won't say too much on YouTube. But the point is, if you can't bring your case before a court, how can you say that you don't have any evidence? No one ever heard the evidence because there was no standing. But I guarantee you, if it's in reverse, the Democrats will have all the standing they need if they're losing by, let's say, 10,000 votes in a state like Michigan. They're going to come out of the woodworks, talk about this, talk about how black people were disenfranchised, blah, 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 blah. Detroit, this, they're going to go in Detroit and say, hey, these black people were disenfranchised, and these 10,000 votes that we're behind should be thrown out because of this. They'll find all the standing that they need because they're corrupt. So we're going to have to be leading by 100,000 votes, and then it won't matter. They can't say anything. It's called too big to rig. Trump has it. I believe he does. Absolutely. Kamala. I like that barcode. That's awesome. Okay. Let me see. Mark Jackson, my buddy Mark, he's been with us since the very beginning. Says, whoa, Kyle, important day tomorrow. What you want to bet, we won't know. I hope we'll know. I don't think they'll call it. If that's what you're asking, Mark, I don't think they'll call the election tomorrow. But let's go back to my map here. And these states here, I think they're going to call. And now they'll put Trump at 247. In fact, I think they're going to call North Carolina too. For sure. So I think Trump will be at 263 tomorrow. And where am I missing? Why is he at? Because Nevada won't put him over. Yeah, Nevada won't put him over. So they won't call that either. So this is where I see it for most of the night. And we probably won't see Pennsylvania get called at all, because I believe they have a law in place that says that they can count ballots up to 3 days after the election, I believe, Pennsylvania. So, but unless Pennsylvania comes out strong, where they have so many votes that are in play that the outstanding ballots will not make up the difference, then they'll call it. So I'm just being very conservative, guys. Very, very conservative. I think these are the states that they're going to call as of election night. I'm pretty confident they'll call all of these. Pretty sure from what I know. So, and it doesn't count to count Nevada, because it still won't put them over the top. So I'll just leave that gray. And yeah, and so, but if it's like this on election night, let's say 11 o'clock at night, he's won. And you know why? Because this state right here, Virginia, if they haven't called Virginia within the first 2 hours of it closing, let's look at the closing times of these maps. Let's look at this. I'll pull it up now. I'm gonna pull up the actual closing times. So Virginia, make sure you guys can see that. Oop, I'm not showing it. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not showing my map. Sorry. I thought we were showing it. Okay, so these are the polling. Let me go back to the map. Sorry. I want to show you this. I wasn't showing the map, so I want to just show you where we were. So what I was saying here, this is what I was showing before. I'll say it again. So these are the states that I think are going to get called election night. These guys right here. And what I was saying before was that it won't help to call Nevada, because Nevada won't put them over the top with this map. It'll put them one shy. So I'll keep that at gray. But what I was saying before was, if you see this at about 11, 12 o'clock at night, this map, just like this, then Trump's going to win, probably in a landslide, because Virginia is too close to call. And Virginia has a lot of Democrats, but it is this close for a state like that. It's a bellwether in the sense that most of the swing states vote to the right of Virginia. So if Virginia is within 1 or 2, that means Wisconsin will be Trump +1. Just at the surface. If Trump was winning Wisconsin by 5, he would be winning it by 7, because it's going to vote to, let me hear it. what I'm saying is, if Wisconsin in and of itself, without anything else going on, if it's 5 points leaning for Trump, the tendency with Virginia, it's going to vote to the right of that by 2 points at least. So yeah, 5 points would be that margin. So at least 2 points for the swing states across the board if Virginia is at least 1 point. And that's why I'm saying that if Virginia is this close or if Trump wins Virginia, all the swing states are going to go as well. So let's go to the polling times I was going to show you before and show you what time Virginia closes. And make sure you guys can see that. You can. Let me pull down. I got to keep checking back to make sure you guys can see my screen. All right. So Virginia is blue. So it means the polls close in Virginia at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. So let's just go through this kind of like without doing anything crazy. So our live stream will start around 7 because the polls in Indiana and Kentucky, who cares? That's gonna go to Trump. By the time we start our broadcast at 7 o'clock, they probably have already called Indiana and Kentucky. That's my thought. Somewhere around 7:30 by then. By the time North Carolina closes, we should know Indiana and Kentucky. By 8 o'clock, we have the green states closing. At 7 o'clock, if they don't call Virginia at 8 o'clock on the nose Tuesday night, that's a good sign. So every hour that goes by when you don't call Virginia is a plus for us. Now, if they call Virginia early, don't panic. It just means it's supposed to go for them, and he was going to win by 3 or 4 points. I'm sorry, she was going to win by 3 or 4 points. Anyway, but remember, Biden won Virginia by 10. So anything under 10 is good for us. And Biden won by 10, but still only won the election by 40,000 votes. He won, again, I'll say it one more time, 20,000 votes in Wisconsin, 10,000 votes in Arizona, and 10,000 votes in Georgia. He had 81 million votes and still only won, quote unquote, by 40,000 votes. And so what the election is going to come down to is, well, let me put it this way. Can the Kamala campaign, can Kamala Harris, can she take the lead that Biden had in 2020 of 40,000 votes? Can she keep that the entire night when the entire electorate has gone from 4 to 6 points to the right? It's gotten more Republican by 4 to 6 points. Can she do that, hold the lead, and still have the legs to carry it? That's the question. And the consensus across the board is if Republicans come out and vote even close to what they normally do, 60% of what they normally do on election day, because Republicans typically vote more on election day. And we're going to get into some things too about men. There's a big thing about men aren't coming out to vote. I have a slide on that too. We'll talk about that too when I go through my slides. So that's going to be important to watch tomorrow. Now, North Carolina, I think they're going to call North Carolina by 9 o'clock. So let's just keep going here. So I can't fill this in because I can't, but if I were to do this, put it this way, if you look at these swing states here, or these states here, just everything in red right now, they're going to call within about an hour, max 2 hours after the polls close. Number one. And it goes for the blue as well. The ones that are gray are swing states. Those are going to take at least 3 hours to call if they are within 3 points. If it's anywhere from, let's say, if it's 1 point, they ain't calling anything. But if it's a solid 2 to 3 points, it'll take about 3 hours for them to call that. So, yeah. So we want to see we want to see a state like Virginia not get called, and we want to see a state like Minnesota not get called till late in the afternoon. New Hampshire, same thing. In 2016, Virginia and New Hampshire took a long time to come in. That's what we want to see. So that's what I'm saying. I think it'll be like this for a long part of the night until way into the evening. But let's go back to this one more time. That's actually more I have to say on that. I mean, it's not much more to say about that. And I will get into the weeds much later on this when we talk about the other ones too, but I won't spend much time on this. So let's kind of wrap this segment up, and I'm going to go through answer these questions here, rapid fire, go through the slides, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back, take about a 5-minute break, and go over the swing states in crazy detail. And then we'll probably call it a night after that. But let me go through these questions here. Thank you, Mark, for that question. Let me see. He says here, Mark says, and why are nearly all the swing states saying it's going to take a day or two to count the votes? Well, you know why. I mean, because they're cheating. But the thing is, that's where it's going to be. See, that's the thing. So the Republican Party did something that was really good this time. Whereas we had Ronna McDaniel, who was the chairman for 2 cycles in a row. She should have been fired after 2020, but she stuck around after that. And when she left the role, I believe in May, they took Laura Trump and another gentleman, split the role of the RNC. And the goal was twofold for them. The goal was to protect the votes and to get out the votes. I think Laura Trump was dealing with getting out the votes, and the other has, I can't remember his name. I'll look it up in a second. Is about protecting the vote. So maybe I have it backwards. So the get out the vote is going to be done tomorrow. To protect the vote is going to be tomorrow going forward. So from what I understand, they've got 200,000+ volunteers, poll watchers, and lawyers out the wazoo to make sure that the laws that they agreed upon back in May, June, July of this year are held. So it was a good strategy, because one of the reasons why they were able to beat us that way in 2020 was because they were able to get around statutes that were not there, election violations, laws that were not there, that were being violated. For instance, in Wisconsin, when they said that there's a law in Wisconsin saying you have to have a on-file record of every single absentee ballot. So if John Doe is in his college dorm, sends in a request to get absentee ballot, there has to be a written physical record on file for John Doe that he has a ballot in his possession. That wasn't held. There were way more than 20,000 votes that didn't meet that criteria. And that alone would have flipped Wisconsin. So, but I think what they were able to do was they were able to lawyer up, get corrupt lawyers, and get them to, change things on the fly, and knowing that they were going to have a hard time litigating that in time. Because when you litigate, it takes time, and they knew that. So this time, what the RNC did was, it said, okay, fine. So we're gonna say, these are the laws. Do you agree on this? This is what we're gonna. This happens. We're gonna do this. This happens. We can do this. And when they violate those procedures and laws and agreements, they sue the crap out of them, and that's what they've been doing. And so I'm hoping that phase of it is as good as the phase was to get out the vote. And but to your question, Mark, it's frustrating. And that's why Trump has to get in. Like Elon Musk said, if we lose this thing, we're never going to have a fair election ever. I'm in favor of a convention of states. Go to my locals channel and see an article I put out there with the top 10 new amendments that I would think would be awesome to have. And it's just 10. We could have more, but have the convenience, or have the creation of a convention of states. It's a part of the Constitution, which allows you to add amendments to the Constitution without Congress, without the president, without a governor, without anybody. All you need are a supermajority of state legislators who come together and agree to do this, have this meeting. They come together and then they say, we're going to have these amendments. We're going to talk about it. We're going to discuss, and we're going to negotiate. We're going to do whatever we have to do. We're going to come to the agreement, and we're going to ratify these new amendments to the Constitution. And then they get tossed around to the states for verification. And if there's the best part about it is if there's 2/3 majority already, then chances are they can get those things ratified more quickly because they've already there to do it. So it would be the same people, the same states that are in the Convention of States that would eventually ratify what they did. So it's pretty cool. It's never happened, but we need something like this because the reason why we even have a Convention of States option in the Constitution is because when they were doing the Constitution and they were about to wrap up and go home for being in that hot Philadelphia Independence Hall all summer, no windows, by the way, stinking, all that stuff. They were just tired and they were old guys in there. Some of them are young, but most of them, a lot of them are old. And it was just a lot. But they said, you know what? We have to do one more thing, guys. We have to add this to the Constitution because what happens if the government is corrupt? What happens if the Congress is corrupt? What do you do then? How can the people do anything if there is truly tyranny? If there's true tyranny, and this kind of makes me feel a little good though, because even if it does get crazy, even if let's say Kamala Harris gets in there and she stacks the court with 15,000 judges and she adds Guam and Puerto Rico and DC and Cuba as a state, and they have 80 senators. We only have 10 senators. Craziness, right? We could still fix everything with one Convention of States. So the founding fathers were really, really good, really, really good. But it makes it much tougher because, of course, the media would say they're being racist, and this and that, and the public opinion would turn against it, and it would be a nightmare. But theoretically possible still, no matter what, because Congress is out of the picture, the president's out of the picture, Supreme Court's out of the picture, everyone's out of the picture other than the state legislators. They're the only ones that have the plenary authority to do that, meaning the only authority to do that. So anyway, I'm really digressing. So let's just keep going to more questions, and then we'll get going here. Does anyone know the truth about the fake electors case? I do not, but I'm going to star this. I'll put a favorite on that. I'm going to get back to that. I'll get an answer back to you on that one. Okay, there we go. Mark has the answer. Well, I'm not sure what that is. Can someone fill me in there? What's going on with that? I'm just curious about that. There she is. Yep. Kajana Brown. Yep. She is a total shill for the DNC. Absolutely. Oh, Electoral. Of course. I just went brain dead. I went totally brain dead. I couldn't. I knew I was. Thank you. EV, Electoral votes, of course. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, you know what? If they could, they would, man. Mark is funny, man. He dude's funny, man. I love Mark. That's great. Your chat is not working. Just a quick check. It's not working? Is your chat not working? It's working. Yeah. All right, so Mark had to go. Thank you for hanging out. Yes, John, we got to vote. Absolutely. I'm kind of running longer on this segment, but I'm just going to go through and see if I can get to as much of these as I can. Let's look at Electoral College votes here. So here we have national early voting comparison. So this is interesting. So early voting in 2020, the Democrats, again, the COVID, they had a 15-point margin over Republicans, meaning, and you may have heard this term before called firewall. A firewall simply means when it comes to elections is how big a lead can you get in early voting that your opponent has to catch up. Now it's tied at 40-40. So Republicans have done a fantastic job. And like I said before, everywhere you see Republicans are up and Democrats are down. I've not seen one case, anything I've looked at for the past 2-3 weeks, where that was not the case. And this is a perfect classic example of that. Here's some battlegrounds here. This is data Republican small r. It says 6 out of 7 battlegrounds either are tied or have a slight Republican lead in early voting. PA being the exception, Pennsylvania. For these states, Republicans only need to win election day to win the election. And that's right. So let's go back to my map. So I explain that to you guys. So let's come back here. I'm going to flip back one screen. So what they're saying here in this particular case, let me pull it back. Is I have it on the screen here? Let me pull it back on the screen. No, if I do that, you won't be able to see it. So what they're essentially saying is all the swing states that there, Nevada, Arizona, I guess Florida's the swing state, I guess, but yeah. Georgia, North Carolina, all of those. All of those states, Republicans lead in the early voting, which means all we have to do is just outnumber them on election day, which we traditionally do anyway in our sleep. Just to give you an example of how good the Republicans are on election day, because they mentioned Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, we're down by, well, I'll tell you this story, and I'll tell you how much we're down by in Pennsylvania. So in 2020, this is actually incredible. If this one thing I say tonight that should make you feel comfortable about us winning tomorrow is this, and this is incredible. I just, every time I say it, I can't believe it. So in 2020, with COVID, with people scared out of their minds, got the masks on, shivering in their not because they have COVID, shivering in fear in their homes, and so they get the ballots. People come to their door and say, "Have you voted yet?" "No, I haven't." "Would you like to vote?" "Yes, I would." "Here's a ballot. Can you fill it out?" "Yes, I would." "Do you want me to take it back to the to the election board? If not, you can take it to the drop box and take it off. You don't have to get out of the car. You can just throw it in the box." "Sure, I'll do that." Much easier to do it that way than to get off work. You just worked an 9-hour shift. Then you gotta, get showered because you don't want to go to the polling and stay in line stinky. Then you get out into the car and you see this long line that's around the building because you got there too late. The polls close at 7:00. If you get in line by 6:59, you're good. So you got to park. So, well, maybe I don't vote today. What's the big deal? I mean, say I don't vote. It's much harder to vote that way. And Republicans, because we have, I don't want to be pejorative and be negative, but I'll put it this way. I'll frame it this way. A lot of us have jobs and a lot of us have other things that we have to do to provide for. Not that other people don't, but I know Republicans by and large do. And culturally speaking, we show up election day. But in the case that they don't, Democrats are hoping that we won't. So for Pennsylvania, 1.1 million more Democrats, 1,100,000 people, Democrats, voted more than the Republicans. So if there was 1 million Republicans that voted early in Pennsylvania in 2020, 3,100,000 vote. You get what I'm saying? 1.1 million on top of that. They had a 1.1 million vote lead going into election day in 2020. Do you know how much we lost Pennsylvania by? 80,000 votes. That was it. Because we turned out in droves. And the numbers in Pennsylvania, in fact, I'm going to bring this up to you. I want to show you this here. This is from Scott Presser. I'm going to go off cuff here, but I'm going to share this particular tweet that he put out. Here it is. So this is Scott Presser. He is one of the he has his own outreach organization in Pennsylvania. There are others, but he's probably the most famous. This guy, and I've said this several times on live streams and in private and whatever. If he can deliver Pennsylvania, they need to be building statues for this dude. This guy is off the charts. And this is kind of a summary of what he's done in the past 8 months. He tweeted this tonight. He said, I have done everything I can. Moved to Pennsylvania, launched an organization, hired 70 field staff, flipped Pennsylvania counties from blue to red. And he did at least 2. I think he did 3. Cut Democrat voter registration in half. Pushed early voting message, cultivated thousands of volunteers, and now it's up to you. Vote. God bless this dude. This dude is awesome. And, so that everything he said there is absolutely true. And based on his enthusiasm, go check out his X feed. Dude is off the charts, man. He is out of control. He's an animal and an absolute patriot. So God bless him. And I think we're going to do good things because of people like him. He's not the only one. There's another gentleman that I can't remember his name right now. He's got another big outreach there in Pennsylvania. And Steve Turley as well has been following this on this YouTube channel. And so I think Pennsylvania is the only one we don't really quantifiably know, but because we only have, I didn't finish this. Okay, so they had a 1.1 million vote lead on election day. We came 80,000 votes short of winning Pennsylvania. So what is it today? What's the lead today? Is it 1 million? Is it 900,000? 700,000? 800? 600? 500? 400? No. How about 300,000? That's their vote today. We can do 200,000 votes in our sleep. We'll have 200,000 votes in probably an hour after. We'll probably have 300,000 votes by noon. So yeah. Now I guess past this prologue, right? Nothing's guaranteed. People could all take the assumption, oh yeah, we got this in the bag and stay home. We could do what Hillary Clinton did in 2016. Yeah, you know what? I don't think we should go to Wisconsin or Michigan. Why should we go there? Why not go out west to Arizona? Why not go out west and see if we can, pump up the numbers and try and get a bigger electoral college victory by going to states that we probably would lose. But let's try those anyway. Let's expand the map and be overconfident. I think Mook, guy named Mook, was her campaign manager, totally cocky, and it caught the Democrats by surprise. And a gentleman in Virginia, he's a pollster. I followed him. His name is Christian Hines. He had a really kind of a glum podcast this past week, but he was saying, look, I'm not trying to be glum. I'm trying to say, hey, I don't want to see a reversal of 2016 against us. That we're too cocky. We're up in the Gravett Center in New York, symbolically at least, and to see our night be shattered and have our people screaming at the moon like that one meme character that screams at the moon. Not that we do that anyway as Democrats or as conservatives, we don't do that, but internally we will be doing that, right? I know I will. Especially, this is our election to lose. So anyway, and I'll get into some other things too, some choke points that could be a problem. I'll get to that in a second here. Let me see if I can get the rest of these. I'm kind of going slow. I may have to go through all these. Let's talk about men voting. Because there's a big thing about Charlie Kirk posted something the other day about men in Pennsylvania not voting. Well, and make sure that men do vote. And so this Latinx adjacent tweeted this: the national electorate on Tuesday will be male plus 9 and around 80 million people. Thanks for your time. Stop listening to idiots on here. So he was basically saying, stop listening to people saying that men won't turn out. And so I have some numbers here for this. So men who vote, hold on me. Had to mute the microphone for that one. So men show up at a rate of, on average, if I have this right. Nope, I'm saying that wrong. Okay, so Republicans in general in Pennsylvania, I didn't say this. Republicans, not just men, were R plus 30 on election day. in Pennsylvania. And so they're expecting Wisconsin to be plus 12, and I have other numbers here for other states. So the thing is to show up. I don't have the numbers here in front of me for men in terms of what they show up on the average, but at 9 points, was it 9 points? Let's go back to that. Yeah. So that should be good for us. And not to mention, who's to say that women aren't going to vote for Trump? Just because they're women voting doesn't mean they're voting for Kamala. Black people, by and large, are voting for Trump, but a lot of them aren't. In fact, if you look at men, black men in particular, under 50 in urban cities, aren't voting for Kamala for many reasons. And so just because blacks' numbers are up doesn't mean that they're voting for Kamala. In fact, a big portion of them, maybe up to 30%, will not. And if Trump gets 30% of the black vote, I mean, come on. And if they show up and vote for him, that's like a double whammy. Not only are you not getting the vote, Trump's getting the vote. And if they don't show up, then it's like a +1 for Trump. So he gets double if they vote for him because they're not voting in the Democrat column and they're voting for him. If they don't vote, then she doesn't get the votes when they normally would have gone to her. So I heard that there's some rumors out there. I don't want to say too much, but that there's some reports, and I know how these reports are. Trump gets a lot of reports that he said this or did this that are totally bogus. But I'm getting multiple accounts of the Trump-Harris campaign just going crazy about the lack of turnout in Pennsylvania in particular. So we shall see. I'm not going to cover North Carolina because I'll cover that in the other. In fact, I won't cover any of these actually until we cover the others. There's no point in doing that because I'll just double myself up. No Georgia either. Let's just go down to Rasmussen, the last poll. So last poll from Rasmussen. This is Georgia. I don't care about that either. So, yeah, I'll cover that in the next segment. And none of this really matters until I get to the next segment. But let's talk about this because this is interesting. And this is kind of getting off kilt here, but there's a county in Florida called Duval County. And Duval County is what they call bellwether with Georgia. The makeup in Duval County is very similar to Georgia. And what happens in Duval typically happens to Georgia. And so you can have a predictive measure against Georgia because Georgia does not do their early voting reporting by party. It's just who voted. So what they do is to figure that out, they actually go to a bellwether county to see if they can kind of figure out what it might look like. So this is all based on that. So Duval County in Florida, the Republicans' lead has dipped to 2 points from about 3 to 3.5 last week. After the election day, I expect it will be +3 again, and Trump should win it by 3. Consequently, Georgia by 6. So it seems like as Duval County goes, Georgia goes to the right of Duval County by 3. So that's what I'm getting out of that. All right. So what I'm going to do now, guys, I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break, and I have all my stuff queued up. But what I'm going to do in this next break, I'm going to go through North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and give you really in-depth numbers here. This is all from Seth Keshel. I can't take credit for any of this because I'm part of his Substack, and I want to share this with you to give you more indication of how this is going to look. And I think personally, Election Day, let's just go back to the map real quick. Lee, let me go back here and share this. I think this map here is going to be, I'll leave it right here, guys. I think it's going to look like this when they call it. I think that's going to be it. I think that's going to be what they're going to call. They may call Nevada too, because I think if Trump wins Arizona by 5, I think it'll carry over into Nevada. These states don't happen in vacuums. Just like, you won't see, Pennsylvania, him win Pennsylvania and lose Wisconsin. It's just not going to happen. Just like he won't, lose Virginia by 1 and not win Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Now, Michigan is a Michigan is crazy because it's the whole situation I mentioned there. They're corrupt, but he'll get those. It doesn't go in a vacuum. So this is how I think it's going to look. By about 2:00 in the morning, they may not call it. I think they'll have, Wisconsin sort of like this, but looking at the numbers, we're going to see there's an area, they're called the WOW counties. They're very conservative counties. There's 3 counties. I can't name them. They're Watchaka something, but there's 3 counties. They're called the WOW counties, and they're staunchly establishment, McCain, Romney, Republican counties. And I think they're coming more home to Trump. Whereas before they were more, never Trumpers. But I think Kamala is just scared to live in heebie-jeebies out of just about everybody. And I think Wisconsin has a little bit more integrity in their polling, and the numbers look better there, I think, just overall. And Brett Favre spoke there as well, got them galvanized. So I see Wisconsin being the one we go through. Ultimately, I think we do win Pennsylvania. Ultimately, I think we end up winning. Well, I'll give them Michigan, only because I'm not even gonna in Minnesota they'll probably take that as well. So I'll give them that as well. I don't think we're gonna take Nevada. I think they'll take New Hampshire as well. And I think they'll take Virginia. So I think it'll look like that, conservatively speaking. But I can conceivably see Virginia going red if they get the kind of numbers that Youngkin got, I believe, in 2022. He ran for governor. Virginia's challenging, but if the black vote comes down that much, and if the white working class vote comes down, the white under 50 non-church going, it doesn't really matter where they are, whether they be urban or rural. Any white male under 50 who's working class, who particularly doesn't go to church, they're breaking for Trump by 20 points as of a couple of months ago. I'm not sure that's ever changed. If they come out in droves for Trump, or don't vote for Hillary, or vote for Kamala, and the black men who are working class, who live in the Richmonds, live in the the more urban areas of Virginia, who are under 50 as well, they're also breaking for Trump at a 20% clip as of a couple of months ago. And I had that information on my locals channel. You can go check it out for yourself. I got that documented out there. I've been quoting it for months. So, but if that happens and the turnout in Virginia is crazy high, like it was, like if they get the election day turnout of like a 2020 that we do, and they get a sub 2016 turnout, oh yeah, Virginia's flipping red. If that happens, then they're going to lose Minnesota. They're going to lose Michigan, because Michigan's going to be 3 or 4 points, and they're going to lose New Hampshire, and they're going to lose New Mexico, possibly. Mexico, they could lose Mexico too, but for different reasons. I really studied that much. I'll leave it there. I don't want to speak to what I don't know about, but I can see him getting 340 easily, maybe even 345. And even better, I see New York coming down, maybe within 10 points. New Jersey is certainly under 10 points. These states here are going to get more and more lighter blue. Even California, Hawaii is moving red by a higher rate than any other state in the country recently. It'll still stay blue, but it's getting red. It's getting redder. Every state minus Colorado has gotten redder over the past year. So this is, if this is not a wave election, I don't know what is. But the only thing that keeps me from getting too excited, I guarantee you, if this was 2004, I would have called this tonight. If this was 2008, I would have called this tonight. If this was 2012, I would have called this tonight. If this was 2016, I would have called this tonight. I've never seen a map like this in our favor in my lifetime. I remember I was pulling for Bush in 2000, was it 4? And it was tight. It came down to Ohio. He ended up winning by a comfortable margin, won the popular vote, but I figured he would win, but it was not like this. If I had this map, and on Tuesday, 2003, I guess where it was, election, was it 2003? Well, yeah, 2004, because the inauguration is the next year. So yeah, I would have been like, it's over. Bush won this. So, but because of our climate of 2020, I'm gun shy. I've got memories that have been really bad memories, a horrible year. I'm not willing to say anything at all, definitively speaking. But outside of that aspect of it, yeah, Trump's going to kill it. He's absolutely going to kill it. So I think this is probably going to be his ceiling would be New Mexico. Yeah, realistically speaking. I mean, you can get crazy and say New York. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility. It really isn't. If everything falls in line, but I'm not going to go that far. But this would be a great map for Trump, and this would be the kind of thing that would really have the left rethinking themselves. If this happened, I don't know how the left comes back from this, because they would have to admit that the policies suck. And the Marxist, conglomerate, globalists, the big ag, big pharma influences that are in that group, the permanent political class that are inside there, the Hollywood elites that are throwing money into this, that's all hard to unwrangle. And I don't know how you get a candidate to galvanize behind a populist style coalition. I mean, even if you got The Rock, a famous guy like The Rock, super charismatic, super personable, can speak. I mean, yeah, he's fantastic. But what is he going to run on? Well, I guess it doesn't matter, does it? If Kamala can run on crap. But even still, people are not going to take the type of policies that they're trying to put in place. They just aren't. I don't care who's giving it. I don't care if you're The Rock or not. So that's what I think would be the ceiling there, 345. So to answer your question, Stephen, I think you said, can you make, let me see what your question was. Let me make sure I got it right. I don't want to misquote you, Stephen. Let me see. What did you say? 320. Yes. So yes, let me just for fun, before I take the break, let's just go 320 and let's just reset the map. So let's just go 320, 26. Wow, that's tougher than I thought. At 320 is tough. I mean, just being conservative, he would have to get Michigan, obviously. He had to get that in Pennsylvania. That's 320. That's kind of what a lot of people have. A lot of people have that. So to get to 320, you have to take Virginia. And that would do it. Or Minnesota. That's probably his best path, Stephen. That's probably his best path. And Minnesota's close. It's super close. So, yeah, that's probably his best path there. So, yeah. Anyway. All right, guys. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a quick break here. I said, you couldn't hear me, could you? Could you guys hear me? So you couldn't hear me. Let me say the last part again. So I'm going to take the break here, take a 5-minute break, and I'm going to queue up my stuff. And there's no more questions in the group. And so at this point in time, I am going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to come back. We're going to cover these data points for these various swing states to hopefully give you some more confidence. And if I remember, I'll give you some choke points of things that could go wrong tomorrow, and how likely those are to happen. So we'll do all that in the next segment, and I'll be back in about, let's call it 5 minutes. If I can find my thing. There we go. Okay, guys, I'll see you in a few. All right, we're back. Let me cut the music off. All right. We're back. So I was going through these I was going through the data sheets, man. Kamala, man, she's in trouble, dude. She is in some serious trouble. Let's start with North Carolina. Let's jump right in. So this is North Carolina. So I highlight some stuff here in the break. So North Carolina, this is again from Seth Keshel. I recommend you guys check him out. He's got a fantastic Substack. So I highlight this here. He says here, I have the state as a leaner for the entire cycle, likely to go for Donald Trump by a margin inside 10 points. I previewed it in July and ballpark 4 to 6. Look, I said Trump will win North Carolina by 6 for months. Go back and check. Go look at my Facebook page. Go to my profile. Type in search and type in North Carolina. I usually premise my statuses with the state with a colon, with the abbreviation. So search on NC colon, you'll see it in there. Because the fact this is where I live. I live here. I know this. Mitt Romney beat Obama in North Carolina. And the Research Triangle Park is not Northern Virginia. Not yet, at least. And we just don't people in North Carolina are Democrats who never changed the registration and they still vote Republican. So anyway, he goes on to say, I have gone further into analysis just as I have with other states. And I've considered the seven decisive states. This isn't one of them, I don't think. But so in 2020, it was a D plus 5.3 electorate, meaning that there's 5.3 more Democrats that voted for Republicans. In 2024, it's 1.4. Net shift is basically 4 points. And so party registration presents an ugly picture for Democrats, with 96 of 100 counties more Republican or less Democrat than they were in 2020, just like everywhere else. That's what you see everywhere. Trump still won the state despite the conditions of 2020 quasi-election. He says quasi because there are ballots flying everywhere with rampant mail-in balloting abuse and before the state adopted voter ID. And that's another reason why she won't win, because we have voter ID in North Carolina. So anyway, so what must Harris do to win? Fundamentally, the underdog in North Carolina, a state Trump has won twice and one that shows increasingly Republican registration trend almost everywhere. I analyzed the Democrat window of opportunity early this year and found that Joe Biden, the presumptive nominee at the time, was unlikely to have a ceiling higher than 30,000 votes, less than a point in victory margin if and only if everything went his way. The same equation remains for Kamala. So let's just say North Carolina is gone. To further complicate things for Harris, Mecklenburg, which is Charlotte, is 200,567 votes off its total 2020 turnout. That's a lot. With just today's early votes and election day remaining to equal it. So let me just give you a little background here. Seth is an analyst. I mean, he's going to be on a live stream tomorrow night with best-selling author Larry Schweikart. This guy's legit. You can look him up in terms of his credentials. He's a veteran too, I believe. Not that it matters, but typically our armed forces personnel have a high level of integrity. So yeah, and everything he says here matches up to what I've been seeing as well. 16 of 19 counties, over 69.9 statewide turnout mark our Trump won counties from 2020. So come down to the bottom here. His pessimistic model, worst case scenario, Trump wins by 1.4, which is 0.1% higher than he won in 2020. Trump won by 1.3, I believe, in 2020. And I think he'll win by 6. I've been calling 6. I've been calling 6 for months. So he says the registration model is 6, and he says he'll win by 5. So I can definitely live with that, and that's a margin of 281,000 votes. Now you see what I'm talking about. When I say we don't want anything less than 1%, because 1% is like, that can be like 10,000, 20,000 votes. We don't want that. That's too close. That could easily be, we want something like 3 points or more, especially in these big states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, right? So we want those 3 points or better. Makes it too big to rig. All right, let's go to the next state. Let's go to Nevada. First, let me see if there's any questions for this. Any questions? No questions. All right, let's go to Nevada. Here he says, Nevada is generally considered the furthest left of the main battlegrounds. Although I have also had New Hampshire in my set of decisive states, which is, I'm sorry. So these states that I'm giving you are what he considers decisive states. So that would be, again, North Carolina, that's 1, Nevada 2, Arizona 3, Georgia 4, Pennsylvania 5, Michigan 6, Wisconsin 7. So that's just 7 decisive states. That's what we're going to be covering. So Nevada will not likely tip the race for Trump, like we mentioned before. So that map, remember, it got him to 269. That's what he means. But it can combine with Arizona for a win if Trump wins Pennsylvania and North Carolina, but not Georgia. Ooh, interesting. Huh. So he's basically walling her off when I was wondering, okay, that makes sense. So yeah, that's because Georgia for a long time worried me because in 2020, Georgia looked scary with just that, everything about Georgia was just, but he only lost by 10,000 after all that was said and done. And Georgia's gotten redder, by the way. It can also be paired with New Hampshire on a long shot to make up for 10 electoral votes lost elsewhere. So yeah, okay, that's good. I can live with that. I didn't mention this, but the no tax on tips is very important for a state like Nevada when they have a hospitality industry there with Vegas. And that was really, really big. Another thing about the people in Nevada is the fact that they are disenfranchised and they are less likely voting with their customers, who are these big ballers, these whales, these rich fat cats who come in. They're seeing themselves lessly identifying with them and more identifying with the people around them, the other workers around them who are being mistreated, disenfranchised, ridiculed for their race, ethnicity, or seeing illegals taking their jobs or whatever. And they're less identifying with those people who were before, whereas hospitality would want to be with the big ballers and vote alongside them because they thought they were part of that class. But recently, they're feeling less and less that way. And now they're gravitating more to the Republican Party, who is becoming the party of the working man. And the no tax on tips is extremely popular. I'm not sure if he mentions it here in this article, but okay, so Joe Rogan endorsed Trump, so that's cool. I know Joe Rogan even did whatever, doesn't matter. So here we go. So these are the counties for Nevada. So the only county that really matters is Clark County. That's Vegas. There's just not enough numbers outside of that. But if Democrats have a lesser margin, which here looks like it's down 5, roughly 5, then you can shave off those numbers and run up numbers everywhere else. So if we look at, let's just look, Carson is up. That's 12 to 13. That's up. Churchill is up 0.6. Let me see. All these are higher. 31 to 33, 41 to 43, 50, 45 to 49, 62 to 61. And that went down. That's the only one. Eureka County went down in Republican registration, but not by much, like 0.5. Let me see. Humboldt County went up 3. Yep, they're all. And look at Lincoln County. It went up almost over 10. The line is exactly the same. It actually went up 0.2. So yeah, so that's what's happening. So even though Clark County is still deficit, they've cut it down by 5, and they're running up the number everywhere else. So it's D plus 5 on the other side here. So they still have the margin, but it's within, a point. So yeah, Nevada is definitely in play. That's why they're saying it's close, because Clark is such a big deal. But you never know. Election day, it can really change. So in 2020, it was 4.7. D plus, and now it's 0.5. Oh yeah, okay, I see now. Yep. So net shift is 4.2 for Republicans, and so coming down to the bottom here, just cut the. I actually highlight this. Let me read it. My registration analysis suggests that the outlying 15 counties are nearly maxed out in terms of possible margin, which basically means they ran up the numbers in these counties as much as they possibly could. I mean, they got every ounce out of that. So he's saying that he probably maxed out there, so it's going to have to come from somewhere else to get the win. He says Trump isn't likely to net as many new net positive votes in margin as he has in 2 previous runs in them, meaning he must get the job done by substantially reducing Democrat margins in 2 big counties, Clark and Washoe. Of course, both have favorable registration trends, and Republicans have an outstanding lead with 49,242 ballots statewide with mail and early votes ahead of Election Day, which is very swiftly moved Nevada to the back of the conversation. That lead may dwindle as mail is tallied before Election Day, but those results are nothing short of eye-popping. So he comes down. His prediction is Trump by 2.5. His pessimistic model is Harris wins by 1.1. Registration model, Trump 3.6. Basically, what he's saying is registration model basically is just if you just look at the electorate itself, just the number of people who registered is, like I said, it's a really key indicator of accuracy. So he's going off that. Looks like he's getting the average. He's taking the average of it, basically. He's adding 1.1 plus 3.6 and just taking the average roughly. And he'll win by roughly 35,000 margin. 35,000. Yeah, that's kind of close. But and thing about Nevada is that's a Harry Reid state, right? I mean, it's a machine over there where a Republican couldn't win there. So the fact that Trump can come in there and even be in the conversation in Nevada is pretty cool. Next state, let's go to Arizona. All right, so Arizona is the most reliable GOP presidential state between 52 and 2016. I mentioned that before, Goldwater and McCain. Shifting coalitions have made it much more competitive than it used to be, particularly the bleeding of urban and suburban Republicans in Maricopa County, but a revitalized conservative grassroots movement and movement of working class Latinos. See, working class. You can see that a lot. Working class is what the Republican Party has become, and it's all through Trump and him taking the portion of the Democrat coalition. He saw that there was vulnerability there. And Bill Clinton warned about it. And the filmmaker, Michael Moore, he warned them about it too. And he stepped in there, and the messaging was right on board. That whole NAFTA thing didn't work out very well, and there's a lot of resentment in the middle class, and that's the party now. And the Republican establishment pushed back on that big time. The Romneys, the Ryans, the McCains, those guys were like, this is, our power base is slipping from us. And the realignment is really astonishing. I've never seen something like this in my lifetime. In fact, I don't think we've seen a realignment like this since, if I had to guess, I'd say Reconstruction. And maybe after that, maybe blacks going over to Democrat Party in the 50s. Well, really, it was 50s more or less. So anyway, let's keep going. Here are your counties here. Where's Maricopa County? Oh, there it is, right there in the center. So Maricopa is the one that matters the most. That's R plus 6.9, which means basically is that there are more Republicans registered in these counties, and Maricopa is a big county. So overall, Republicans have more than doubled their registration in Arizona over the past 4 years. 3.8. where we are now. So what Harris must do to win? If I had never heard of the 2020 election, I'd say she has no shot. Joe Biden's coup was the second Democrat presidential quote unquote win in the state in the post World War II era, and it was miraculously done in the face of record Republican gains. I don't want to talk about Maricopa County anymore. Just bring back bad memories. Biden's win in that county was the first for a Democrat since Harry Truman in 48. Insane. In fact, you're just seeing this for the first time. I'm actually going through these numbers of 2020 for the first time. I didn't do an assessment of 2020 at all in terms of where we did wrong, whatever. I didn't even look at it because I'm like, what's the point? But it's interesting to look at it now. I didn't realize it was like this. I'm glad I didn't look at it before now. What Trump must do to win Arizona, the battle plan isn't much different in Trump's Nevada win plan, meaning just take back the margin in Maricopa County and not get blown out in Pima County. If you can do that, the other counties will carry the field. Minority losses appear to be such a reality for Democrats that Trump stands to make sizable gains in all Democrat counties. Here's the big problem with Kamala. I think this is ultimately going to be the case. It's going to be the working class, men, white, black, and Latino. Those can be the ones that are going to swing the difference. And then you have the issues as well, which ties in why they're voting. So yeah, that's going to be her biggest problem across the board, because typically Democrats love to get into the urban areas and throw in the Beyoncés, throw in the Jay-Z's, throw in the bump and grind, get the emotional crap out of there, whatever, get to Cardi B who's reading her cell phone because she can't read a prompter. They get those people amped up and partying. And if there's an issue like George Floyd on the ballot, then they're going to vote because they're emotional. That's what they do. And they let them forget all the 3.5 years of turmoil the Democrat Party puts you through. But now the last 5 months, you're all emotional about something because something came up and you're not thinking rationally. And then you vote for them and then you realize that they're gone. We'll be back in 4 years. And that gets tired and it gets old. And especially now when they're seeing Latinos who are also feeling that same weight being borne on them. And then you have, on top of that, you have both blacks, whites, and Latinos, working class whites, having their jobs taken from them, from people, low class labor coming in who shouldn't be in the country, illegals. And that adds more resentment. And no one seems to care about my livelihood, even though I'm a citizen. So, I mentioned one more plug of a video that I did this week. It's 2 questions that Black Democrats can't answer. And it's a challenge. If you can answer these 2 questions, then I will dump the GOP. I will never vote for a Republican again. I'll disavow Trump. Just answer these 2 questions in this video. It's about 7-minute long video. And I go through the questions. You can print them out and whatever and email me the answers. And if they're accurate, I'll be at my word. I will do that. I will do a video. And you know what? I may even change the format of the channel to maybe cooking or something. So yeah, I'll leave a link to that video in this chat board. Just go to the YouTube channel or in Rumble. It's there as well. And it's called 2 questions Black Democrats can't answer. But it ties into all the stuff here that I just mentioned. All right, so here we go. Here are the counties in Arizona. Again, blah, 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 blah. He says here that Trump pessimistically will win by 1.4. Overall, he thinks he'll win it by 4.7. I think I had it 6 myself, based on what I was looking at. I was taking other polls and aggregating themselves. So I'm not polling myself. I'm just taking other models and doing stuff with it and putting in my own spin on it. I have it at 6. He has it at 4.7. And so that's 160,000 vote lead. Let's get going. We're getting behind. Let's go to Georgia. Georgia is a seemingly must win for Trump this year, although past the 270 technically exists without it. Trump could hold on to North Carolina and then win Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Nevada or Wisconsin for majority. But I think everyone agrees the ride would be a lot less bumpy if he could simply put away this formerly reliable Republican state that has fallen into the grip of suburbanization, demographic change, and election corruption driven primarily by the introduction of automatic voter registration in 2016. All right, I'm going to go through this. What Harris must do to win? Georgia's 2020 election was nothing short of a dumpster fire. The purpose of this preview isn't to relitigate the past, but that mass mail-in election put Metro Atlanta on steroids, and the state itself had already once drifted to the left when Trump held it by a reduced 5.1 margin in 2016. Still, no one expected Georgia to be the surprise of 2020, and the fact that it did underscore scores why Trump isn't taking North Carolina for granted this year. My pessimistic forecast of Georgia gives Harris room for a very narrow win of less than half a point. It would require the same recipe, especially given the rural turnout boom present in early voting. Overwhelming turnout from Metro Atlanta, of course, Fulton County, Cobb, and Gwinnett counties, with a side of malfeasance to get over the hump. Trump's pathway to victory requires the opposite of Harris's overwhelmingly white rural turnout. And by the way, the election, this is from memory, but is looking to be about 70% white, about 11% black, maybe 12% Hispanic, 8% Asian and other, and so forth. So white turnout is going to be crucial this election. In fact, without it, it's going to be almost impossible for Trump to win. But I think he's going to get it for the reasons I mentioned before. And he's going to get Democrats, white young Democrats who are coming over as well. And right now, if you're young, being a Republican is cool. You know, being a Republican is like the new punk rock, the new, fight the power. You know, we're no longer the rich establishment. We are the party of the middle class, the working class, the blue collar, the steel workers, the union members, not to mention the fact that he got endorsed by, soft endorsements through the polling of two unions, one, a culinary union in Nevada, I believe it was Nevada, and the Teamsters as well. So yeah, this is big stuff. Additionally, rural black counties have horrible turnout, like Daughtry County, which has cast just 60% of its 2020 vote count, and stands to lose thousands in margin for Harris from the 2020 numbers by itself. I'm telling you right now, black people, a lot of us just don't like Kamala Harris. Just don't. We think she's fake, that she's disingenuous, that she changes her accent whenever it fits her. And it's just a serious put off. So here he has the margin 4.1, 16 electoral college votes, and he looked likely to flip Baldwin and Washington counties, and the 205,000 margin he predicts there. All right, 1, 2, 3 more to go. Let's go to Pennsylvania. This is what I'm really interested in, because Pennsylvania is really kind of the state, right? I mean, this is kind of it. This is like the whole ball of wax is Pennsylvania. So let's go to that. So Pennsylvania feels like it's going to be the tipping point state this year, and both campaigns know it. In fact, if North Carolina is as solid for Trump as I think it is, he flips Georgia back, or instead grabs both Arizona and Nevada. Pennsylvania gets him to exactly, if just North Carolina and Georgia or beyond, in North Carolina, Arizona, and Nevada, 270 electoral votes. While past the 270 technically exists without Pennsylvania, Michigan is much more corrupt and is left of Pennsylvania since 1992, which means it votes to the left. So if Pennsylvania is 2, then Michigan's going to be 1, or the other way. Yeah, it's critical that the state Soviet-style voter suppression tactics are overcome on election day, which is going to dish out the vast majority of Pennsylvania's votes. He's pitching a bleak picture. All right, let's keep going. So in 2020, the margin for Democrats was 7.5. In 2024, this early voting is D plus 3.1, so less than half. Net shift is 4.4. Now, remember I said about the 1.1 million? I'm sure he'll get into that in a second here. What Harris must do to win. On paper, there's practically no path to victory for Harris, especially when analyzing the shift in party registration. However, with Pennsylvania operating automatic voter registration, passing around lots of mail-in ballots, and already permitting voter suppression in Republican-heavy areas, she has a glimmer of hope, even if it's faint. Her victory hinges not only on posting overwhelming margins in Philadelphia and Allegheny counties, but skimming Trump's margins in the rest of the overwhelmingly crimson Pennsylvania, based on how mail-in returns have been coming in from the minority-heavy areas. He's to win. It's clear she's not where she wants to be with election day right around the corner. In fact, I mentioned this in early the broadcast, how I had heard unofficially that her campaign let her know of the turnout in Pennsylvania in terms of the just the people who are showing up to return ballots or show up for early voting is not at the number she needs, and she's freaking out. Again, that's unofficial. It's a report. So, but I've heard just not one do that. It's several. I've heard that in many cases, but who knows? You know, people lie and they do false narratives and give false hope, whatever. So, but I will tell you one thing for sure. If this is the case, I am pretty sure she's freaking out. What Trump must do to win, Trump must pile up overwhelming margins with non-college voters, which is what I think that's what he's doing, which should happen now that an Irish Catholic from northern Pennsylvania named Scranton Joe isn't on the ticket and has been replaced by a California radical who has probably never held a wrench or a hammer or worn a hard hat. And he was also taking the position of banning fracking. Improving margins with college-educated voters will go hand in hand with what looks like substantially lower Democrat ballot ceiling in the two major urban counties, Philadelphia and Allegheny, especially now that the GOP has made the mail-in ballot returns gap tighten by more than 20%, roughly 700,000 ballots, than it stood 4 years ago, when Trump won commanding margin of election day and later succumbed to several days of counting trafficked ballots. Oh my gosh. So what he's saying here basically is that the 700,000 is that, remember I said that 1.1 and he's down to 300,000. That's where that 700,000 is coming from, where, you know, they had a 1.1 million lead. We came back, and I think my number is here. We were plus 30 on election day on Pennsylvania, and we came within 80,000 votes of doing that. So, yep. So that's where that comes from. And again, I think they're doing that after the day ballot. It's ridiculous. We have countries that have more population than Pennsylvania doing same day paper ballots and getting returns back within 8 hours. And we can't do it in the same time with less people, with just as much technology, if not more. And just as much manpower. So let's just come down. I'm going to go through this quickly. I'm getting a little tired. So his pessimistic model is we win by 1. If it was just off registration, it'd be 4.6. And he thinks we're winning by 2.8. That's real tight, but he's probably putting in a fudge factor there as well, which I don't blame him. So Bucks County is one that Scott Presler flipped, I know for sure. And the other one, I'm not sure which one it was, but it looks like we could flip many counties, which basically means what he means is what counties voted Democrat in 2020, which are now voting Democrat. That's what we mean by flip. Oh, here we go. Here's his credentials. So he's a MBA, former Army captain, military intelligence, and Afghanistan veteran. So I was right about that. His analytical method of election forecasting and analytics is known worldwide, and he has been commended by President Donald J. Trump for his work in the field. So yeah, so he's legit. Also check out Rich Barris too on the People's Pundit. He's also very, very good. right, 2 more to go, and then I'm going to get out of here. I'm getting tired. All right, so here's Michigan. The good news about Michigan is that if he's carrying Michigan, he's almost certainly already carried Pennsylvania, which is kind of what I said about Virginia, which is less corrupt and votes to the right of the Great Lakes state. So with that being said, let's just do this here. And let's share this tab. I want to just go into this and let's reset the map. And let's just come here. So what he's saying is if Michigan is, let's say, a light pink, right? Then he's probably going to carry Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania votes to the right of that. So that's what he's saying. Similarly, I was saying if Virginia is a light blue or, of course, pink, we're going to carry all of them anyway because they're going to vote to the right of Virginia. So Virginia, everything's got a little, it's got a little connection. Like I said, none of these things are going to be in a vacuum. So we're going back to Pennsylvania. All right, and let's just go through this pretty quickly here. All right, so now, okay, so here again, so registration went down from Democrat 7.5 to Democrat 3.1. Here's your numbers here for the shifts. What Harris must do to win? I think we already covered this already. Are we on Michigan? No, we're in Michigan. I'm sorry, we're in Michigan. Let me go to Michigan. Sorry, guys. We were on Michigan. I already covered that. All right, cool. So we're back on Michigan. Let me just close these tabs out. I'm not going back to these anymore. I'm going to close North Carolina, close Arizona, close Georgia, close Pennsylvania. Cool. So we're just, so it makes it easier for me to figure out. All right, so make sure we're still in Michigan. We are. All right, come back. So Michigan does not register voters by party. For more on the best comparison I could infer for party registration, please read my analysis of Pennsylvania as registration indicator for Pennsylvania. We just covered Pennsylvania, so basically Pennsylvania is going to vote to the right of Michigan. Michigan is going to vote to the left of Pennsylvania. Harris went through the win. Harris has a major home field advantage in Michigan, especially when it comes to the major urbanized areas in the Southeast adjacent to Detroit, which is not limited to Wayne County, Oakland, Washington, and Macomb counties are all rife with corruption that blots out the organic Trump working class surges present in many of their areas. If that's not bad enough, voter registration fraud rings have been broken up in the West too, like in Muscatine County. So that's why I said before we even talked about this, I said Michigan, if it's close, just toss it aside. We're not going to win. That's why in my motto, I basically say we're going to lose Michigan. Not because we don't have the votes, but because of this crap. What Trump must do to win? Best bet for winning Michigan is to run far enough ahead. Yep, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina and the East Coast. That makes the juice not worth the squeeze to pull out all the stuff. Oh, I see what he's saying. Okay. I got you. That makes sense. Okay, so what he's saying here is that they won't bring out the dogs if we're running it up in Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina. So if we're up like 6 in North Carolina, and we're up like 5 or 6 in Georgia, and we're up like 3 or 4 in Pennsylvania, it's not going to be worth them to try and get caught. They might just say, you know what, he already has Pennsylvania, so there's no need to pull in the reins or pull in the dogs to do your little machine stuff. So I guess he could pull off Michigan, but it all comes. It's going to be after the fact that they've already called it anyway, because that's the reason why they called Michigan last time. They already called Wisconsin for Trump, and then eventually they called Pennsylvania. So Michigan ended up getting called several days later, but at that point, no one cared. So why do the illegal stuff when it's moot? So Trump should hold a strong hand. Whether the hand is strong enough to pull over Mike Rogers for the U.S. Senate seat is a different story. Now, I'm not following the Senate seats. Frankly, I don't care about them. The presidency is just so much more important to me right now. The Senate is extremely important. Don't get me wrong. But looking at the numbers, we'll probably hold the Senate, if not carry a little bit of a margin there as as well as the House. I think Trump wins this with the House and the Senate. And so I haven't really been focused on that at all much. He has pessimistic model. Harris wins Michigan by 0.3 and registration model 4.1 for Trump. Overall, he sees Trump winning by 2.5. All right, let's go to the last one. Wisconsin. This is what I'm really concerned about. Probably my biggest one, but I think this is the one that I think they're going to call or will know about on election night, just because I just have a gut feeling about it. And I know the laws in Pennsylvania and how they're trying to do the after ballot counting. And that just scares me. Wisconsin is where already flawed polling goes to die. And by the way, Wisconsin typically votes right and polls left. They poll, like, I think in 2020, I think Biden was up 17 going into the election and it losing or winning Wisconsin, quote unquote, by 20,000 votes. See, you're up 17, but you only win by less than 1%. So anyway, it's very hard to poll in Wisconsin, by the way. The Badger State comes into play most predominantly in a race in which Trump holds North Carolina, but doesn't secure both Pennsylvania and Georgia. Correct. Winning one would give space for Trump to win the election by carrying Arizona and Wisconsin, or Nevada and Wisconsin if Trump was in Pennsylvania. So Wisconsin is my key state outside of Virginia. Wisconsin does not register voters by party. For more of this analysis, go over for Wisconsin, which we will do next. Will Harris move to the win? This map is extremely tough for her, given the potentially 69 of 72 counties have organic trend against Democrats, especially if Trump reserves the atrophy of soft Republican counties like Azuka. That's one of those wild counties, by the way. Azuka, they're WOW, so that's one of the wild counties. Now that Democrats have lost the working class Southwest, which used to vote like Iowa did in the Obama days, statewide candidates must get crushing margins in Dane and Milwaukee counties to win. Milwaukee, however, is substantially down in terms of registered voters by over 35,000 from 2020, which directly impacts how many ballots can be harvested and dumped for late counting. Wow. See, they use those high concentrated areas to do their dirty work. What Trump must do to win? Trump should continue to run up the margin in northern hinterlands of the state, and all indications are that he will flip several competitive counties, including Portage County, which hasn't been won by a GOP presidential nominee since Eisenhower did the trick in 1956. What will be decisive is how much turnout lags in Milwaukee and how much of the existing vote Trump picks off with minorities, especially Black and Latino men. He should be stronger against Harris with white working class voters than he was against Biden in a pandemic-tainted election, and early voting data suggests turnout isn't going to be a problem. I agree with that. So let's come down to the models. Final call, worst case, Trump wins 1.3. Registered model is 3.3. And Trump wins 2.3, 75,000 votes. And that's the ball game. You know, I think this is our path. I really do. I think we'll win Pennsylvania, but it's going to be a nail biter for several days. I think this is the one that's going to get us over the top, and we can just sleep at night. I really feel that way. We'll see. All right, the last one is going to be. Oh, that was the last one, actually. That was the last one, wasn't it? Or did I miss that? Yeah, that was the last one. That was Wisconsin, right? Yeah, so that's it. All right, so let me see, did I? Okay, so let me do one more thing. I'm going to go to my locals, and I'm going to show you this article from Mark Robinson. I mentioned that. So I think I'm going to do a quick break before I do that. And I'm going to do this as a whole new section. I may break this up into a separate video for tomorrow. And I want to talk about Mark Robinson, who is running in North Carolina for governor. So I'm going to get some water here. I'm going to take a quick break, and we're going to cover Mark Robinson. And I'm going to, well, first of all, I'll cover some choke points that things could go wrong outside of what he talked about here. But also I'm going to do that and talk about Mark Robinson, and then talk a little bit about the live stream tomorrow night, and then we'll call it a night. All right. So I'm going to take, let me see. I'm going to take 5 more minutes, actually. So take 5 more minutes. I'll be back. When I start it up, we'll talk about the choke points, other things that could go wrong, and the chance of them happening. And Mark Robinson, and we'll talk about the live stream tomorrow and how that's going to play out. All right. I'll see you guys in 5 minutes. Hello, everybody. We're back. Our last segment for the night. And what I want to do now is I'm just going to go over some choke points or some things that could go wrong and what the chances of those things going wrong are. So the first thing, obviously, hold on, let me sorry. Okay, yeah. So you're, I guess you're thinking, what can go wrong? And let's walk through some of these concerns because there's the viral claim that men aren't voting. I think we talked about men not voting. Men just don't vote on early voting. They vote election day. So election integrity is a big one. Now I got to be careful here on YouTube, but fraud concerns are valid, of course. And I'm reading my notes, by the way, so you know. But the good news is that shady activity is getting caught. They're catching stuff going on in Pennsylvania in particular, and counties are cracking down, making it harder to pull off anything major. But do we know that's going to be enough? That's the thing. I do know that the RNC has done a very good job of doing what they can in the small amount of time that they had, because they only had the role since May when Ronna McDaniel dropped off. I believe it was May of this year. So that's not a lot of time. And she was really asleep at the wheel. She was a horrible chair for the RNC, just horrible. And she did more damage to this party that can't be imagined. But in some ways, if we can get through this, win this election, I think it all would have been for the good. I think 2020, if we get through this and we come out the other side, he gets inaugurated and gets to put things in action. I would say only then would all of this have been worth it, because you saw the left, you saw Marxism, we saw the totalitarian state of radical governors keeping their constituents, their citizens of their state, hostage. And we saw the contrast of decent governors like DeSantis in Florida, and how their life, while not great in terms of just the events of the country, they were bearable. Where some states it was just unbearable, and we saw that. We saw the gaslighting. We saw people telling you what you can do with your bodies, and if you don't do what we say to do with your bodies, you get shunned, you'll get attacked, you'll get doxxed, you'll get not doxxed, but you'll get you lose your job, and all those things. So I think that's pretty much that would be a good thing. But I can only say that after he gets sworn in and gets to work. Until then, I'll reserve that. But it looks like that could be a positive. So we need people like Ronna McDaniel to not do her job, so we can actually expose the people who need to be exposed. And if he can get Elon Musk in there, if he can get RFK Jr. in there over the USDA, if he can get Tulsi Gabbard in there, Tucker Carlson helping out, Vivek Ramaswamy. Can you imagine Vivek Ramaswamy can you imagine him as the White House press secretary? Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. I can see him in that role, but I think he's more talented to be that, though. But then again, Vivek, that may be the kind of role that you need to have anyway. Even though his talent is maybe elsewhere, he's a busy guy. I'm not sure if that's a big role. That's every day, isn't it? I think it is. I'm not sure if he has the bandwidth for that, but somebody like him could definitely be that role and be the spokesperson for the country. All right. Anyway, so another one is independents breaking hard for Harris. So people say that independents could break hard for Harris. Well, that's just not what the polling says. The fear is that they could break for Harris. Historically, though, independents follow the momentum. They backed Obama in 2008, Bush in 2004, and Trump in 2016. Right now, all the momentum is with Trump. Even CNN exit polls in Pennsylvania show that Trump is outperforming his share of early vote compared to Republican percentages. Independents are clearly leaning his way. Yes, they are. I mean, every poll, I saw his numbers as high as 15 and 16 with independents. Second one is there's the assertion that 10% of Republicans will defect to Harris. This claim is made every election, and it rarely pans out. They're just saying basically that never Trumpers will show up and they won't vote. They'll flip over the Harris. Furthermore, the claims that Democrats will suddenly flood the polls on election day are speculative at best. Historically, Democrats vote early and they're not hitting their numbers. So they're not hitting the early number of voters, which means they're going to have to be extra high on election day. Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen said that 50% of Trump voters plan to vote on election day. 50%, compared to only 39% of Harris voters. Democrats are simply not ready for an election day ground game of that scale. They don't have the people. They just don't. They typically like months and months and months and weeks and weeks and weeks to do early voting because they have to go out there and manufacture that and get people on the ground to do the whole knock and grab stuff. Next one is so that's pretty much those are the major choke points that have been told to me, and most of those are speculative. None of those are concrete. So it's not like it's like doomers who always say, "Well, oh my gosh, what's going to happen?" Those are the biggest things there. I could say one more, but I won't here on YouTube because I know I'll get hit for that one. I think what I might do, guys, is if I'll make a note of this, I'll put it right here on my notepad. And what I'm going to do is in this broadcast, I'm going to stay on Rumble for a few minutes and just go into some other things too, if you want to stick around. So, and you can see that Rumble down at the bottom where we can go to Rumble. I got some things to talk about this in terms of election integrity. I'll do only on Rumble. You guys can check it out if you like. It won't be long, maybe 5 minutes or so. So to summarize, Trump is leading in the polls, including those that historically underestimate him. Republicans have made massive gains in voter registration, and voter ID trends favor them for the first time ever. So Republicans have been leading in voter ID registration for the first time ever, and not to mention that Gallup poll, first time ever. And early voting in key states like Arizona, Nevada shows Republicans dominating with room to grow on election day. And this is something I need to mention really quickly is gas in the tank. And what I mean by that is this. Is that there's this whole thing about what happens if, okay, so Republicans don't vote early on election day. Typically, they vote, sorry, I said that wrong. Republicans typically don't vote early. They typically vote on election day. Okay, so why do you want them to vote early if all that means you're just flipping their votes over and they're not going to show up on election day? Isn't that a problem? That's called cannibalization. And it's a really good argument. And I mentioned this gentleman before. I'll bring his name up here. He is on. In fact, what I can do is this. I'm going to flip my screen and show you this particular dude. He's pretty. I'll put him up right here. Nope, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. His name is Christian Hines, and I have his podcast right here. And I'm going to put it on the screen. Well, you just see it. Just look him up. You'll see it. But so I'm going to share this tab, and I want you to just take this look at this. So this guy here, his name is Christian Hines, whatever. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, Christian. But this podcast here is about 4 hours and a half. And there, within the first 30 minutes, he talks about something called cannibalization and how he was able to determine quantifiably in Virginia that was not happening. It's different for each state, but the reason why we don't think that this happening in any of the major swing states is because of what we call low prop voters or low propensity voters. Those are people who only vote 1 or 2 times every 4 cycles. Basically one or no times every 8 years. And those are the ones coming out enthusiastically for Trump. Also, people who are new registration people who just never voted before, they're excited to vote. So they want to vote as soon as they can. Why if you're a no prop voter, if you want to register, why would you wait till election day? No, you're going to want to vote as quickly as possible a lot of times. And also, Democrats who normally vote early, well, guess what? They're also voting Republican. So their habits haven't changed. Democrats are voting for Republicans, and new voters are voting early. And just so happens that those people are voting for Republicans in the states that we know quantify the party by party, like Carolina, for example. So we're finding that those are the ones voting, not the regular people who vote on election day, which is bad news for Democrats because that means we have a lot of gas in the tank left. That's what we mean by that when we say that. All right. So check out this particular podcast, guys. It came out on October 19th. It's 4 hours. I mean, but you really only need to listen to the first 30 or 40 minutes of it because they get into a lot of stuff about just Virginia. This is a Virginia-based podcast, so it's not applicable to most areas. But as Virginia goes, most of the country, especially the Rust Belt states, will go as well. All right, so let's just. All right, so that's pretty much all I had with that. All right, cool. So now let's talk about Mark Robinson. So Mark Robinson is a guy I've known for a long time. He was in Greensboro, and he just a regular guy. You know, he and his wife, and Mark Robinson made a speech at the Greensboro City Council. When was this? 2015, maybe. It went viral. He went without notes for about 5 minutes, and it was just fantastic about the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. And he ended up getting a coalition behind him. He ran for lieutenant governor, won by a landslide, and he ended up getting in 2020. He ended up getting more votes than Trump. He got 41,000 more votes than Trump did in 2020. So, but then after that, after 4 years, he decided to run for governor. And his polling he was leading the polls early, like in Mayish. And all of a sudden, his polls went up to about 8 or 9 in terms of him being down. But for North Carolina, pollings are way off for governor, especially. Anyway, the governor incumbent was a guy named Cooper. Anyway, so, but then within the past several weeks, CNN dropped a story about Mark that Mark is vehemently denied, but it caused a big stink. And I posted several articles on our locals. You can check them out for yourself. I'm about to pull it up right now, actually. And let me pull the latest one up right here. And so here's the article. I'm going to just go through this quickly. I have like 8 or 9 articles about Mark and his chances, and just trying to see what his campaign needs to do to actually win this thing. And it really resides on Trump early on, because if Trump wins the state by big numbers, then there's something called a Coattail effect, right? The Coattail effect basically says that if there's a big enough lead, people will vote with the top of the ticket, and definitely the governor. So they'll go in pairs. And since Trump and Mark Robinson are very similar in the fact that they're not politicians, they are brash. They are Mark is very powerful. He's a very powerful speaker, and he's very principled, and he's not intimidated. And that's like, in a lot of ways, that's like Trump. And I think what would help him, and what I've told the campaign, is that, look, marry yourself with Trump. And I know the Trump administration or the Trump campaign kind of distance themselves with Mark on the campaign trail, just for the reasons you sort of, honestly, you have to. I'm not sure, they had reasons why they did this. I'm not going to defend or say one was good or one was not good, but I don't think not doing that's going to hurt him, because this story was so big, everyone knows about it, and everyone knows who Mark is. So this isn't like he's an unknown candidate. So by doing so, if they see Trump and they think of Trump, if they think of you and vice versa, then they're going to vote for you. And so if you work out the numbers, if you scale the numbers big enough in terms of a lead, he'll get enough votes to bring that thing down, that vote down, especially if the RCP average comes down within, let's say, 8 or 9. And so just today, I saw, and it could have been earlier than that, Rasmussen actually had a poll of Mark Robinson being only down by 9 points, with the rest of them having down like 18, 15, 14. And I might play a clip here for you guys to see what they're talking about in terms of this. In fact, let's just do that now. In fact, this is a good segue because we're actually talking about Seth as well. So I have a clip here with On Point Politics, which is one of the most accurate pollsters who has models for 2020. He came within like a point of calling Biden for winning that. And we have Seth, who is the Shekel, who we're actually doing the analysis of the 7 swing states. So I'm gonna play this clip here. I'm gonna lead it in and now talk a little more about it, and then just let you know that I'm not the only person saying the same thing. So let me see if I can get this going. Hopefully it'll play. Okay. Let me have to do it a different way. Okay, so let me switch this over to a different. Let me just back up a little bit. All right, I'm gonna share this tab. Oops. All right, sorry, I messed that up. Let me reshare. If you hit the wrong button, you're done. All right, here we go. Nope. That's it. All right, there we go. I'm gonna play this, and it's like about 2 minutes.
Going to go Trump, but it's like more than likely they're not going to break where it cancels out all the gains the Republicans have made. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, a lot of North Carolina is still ancestral deregistration, especially down there in the southeastern part of the state. Where Trump has won them twice, and he's going to win them again.
And that's why they've been wrong in the state. Like, that's why the polling is so abysmal. I mean, you have Stein plus 15. Get out of here.
Yeah.
The polls, you know what's funny that people are not talking about? Stein is actually running slightly worse or about the same that Cooper was like 4 years ago in the polling.
So Stein is the guy Mark Robinson is running against, and Cooper is the incumbent. So I'm going to back up so you won't miss anything.
I mean, you have Stein plus 15. Get out of here.
Yeah.
The polls, you know what's funny that people are not talking about? Stein is actually running slightly worse or about the same that Cooper was like 4 years ago in the polling. Some polls, Stein's actually running worse than
Cooper won by about 250,000.
Yeah, he won by 250,000. But if Trump's winning North Carolina by 7, because I actually have him winning it by 8. I have him winning it by 8, and you have like 6. If he's winning it by that much, Mark Robinson is not losing the governorship, or is at least barely losing it. But it would.
I've never had North Carolina as what I call a decisive state. Now, if Harris won it, clearly it would be pretty damn decisive. But as far as the registration numbers go, we had a D plus 9.5.
Okay, they're talking about Pennsylvania now, so that's all I want you to hear. It's really quick there, but I mean that's. If you follow them, you know, On Point in particular, he's been saying that for literally weeks. And I modeled it at 8 as well, but I wasn't seeing him get 8, even if it's an R plus 17 day of combination with early voting. It's hard to get there with Trump winning by 8. But if he wins Virginia, he wins North Carolina by 8. So that's, you know, so that's what I see. Or even if Virginia's by like half a point or 1, he wins North Carolina by 8. And Mark Robinson is in a good spot. So let's add it back to the screen here, and I'm going to go back to the article. I want to go through some numbers here real quickly, and I'm going to call this a night after I do this. And I'll go with Rumble and talk about a little bit about integrity, and I'll stop there. So let me just jump over to where are we at? Where's my article? There it is. All right, so here we go. So we got it. Perfect. So let me just go this real quickly, just so anyone who's actually following North Carolina, you can kind of use this clip as a video and share it. We only have how much time now? The polls open in about what, 8 hours, give or take. They were already in. Right now, we're on election day. We are actually on election day. So I've gone over live on election day. So that's kind of cool. So today's the day, guys. Get out and vote. So let me read this real quickly here. So with election day today, the dynamics in North Carolina are shifting rapidly. Republicans have not only matched but exceeded the total. In fact, I'm going to change this right now. I'm going to update this real time. I don't think I've ever done this, actually. Updated this real time. The dynamics are today. And this is updated on the 5th at 12. Let's call it 15. Yep. All right, so let's get back into this. Okay, with election day today, the dynamics of North Carolina are shifting rapidly. Republicans have not only matched but exceeded their total 2020 early mail-in voting. So here's a good stat here. So North Carolina Republicans have now exceeded their total of 2020. And so they're up 17, let's call it 18%. And so in 2020 was a huge early voting. It's crazy in terms of the amount. And the fact that they were able to match that is incredible. That right there tells you all you need to know. And here's what I want to bring up. So this poll by Rasmussen has them up by 9, but their accuracy on the state level wasn't great in 2020. So even though they're a great poll nationally, they missed this. So in 2020, Rasmussen's projections were significantly overestimated by Roy Cooper's lead over Dan Forest. They forecast a 15-point win for Cooper, but the final margin was only 4.5, meaning they overstated Democratic support by 10.5 points. If such an error occurs again, Robinson could close the gap or even gain an edge. And the current Rasmussen lead for Stein, 9 points, is overstated by a similar margin. It would imply a highly competitive race or even a narrow lead for Robinson. Just like my guy on point said, if Trump wins the state by, he said 6, 7, or 8, because he has him at 6. That's Seth. He has him at 8. So he said anywhere between 6 and 8. He said there's no way that Robinson's going to lose the election, or at least it will be extremely close. And this matches up. So my numbers are coming up. This is my own analysis. This isn't anybody else's. This is me. It just happens to match up with his, which is interesting. I just plug in my model numbers and I say, I plug them in and see what happens. And this is what it's telling me. So there's several things here too. Early voting is a big indicator. Also, Trump's coattails. So if Trump were to win, let's say he's down by, so we have here Trump winning by 4. If he wins by 4, what happens if that number 9 is accurate? It means Mark's still trailing. But if it's inaccurate, in other words, that 9 is actually 4.5 better, it means he's really 5.5, then that whole thing changes. And if Trump wins by 5, then it's almost even. But again, if you take that 9.9 and take off 4.5 and make it 5.5, whatever the number is, my math, then it's going to be leading. And then if Trump wins by 6 and that Rasmussen number is wrong, then he's winning by a point or 2, Mark Robinson. So now there's a caveat here. There's a caveat here that I gotta say that North Carolina typically splits votes. They basically say we're not going to vote for the same person as the president as we are with the governor, and vice versa. And that's going to be a problem because North Carolina always does that. So that's why he has to have a bigger margin, and that's why he has to have marry himself with Trump. It will prevent the split ticket voting for the average person who says, you know what, I like Trump. And I typically don't vote for the same person, same party for the president. For the governor as I do the president. So I'm not going to vote for Stein. I'm actually going to vote Republican at the top of the ticket because Mark is so much like Trump. And because Mark, we feel, and many people do feel this way, was mistreated by not only his own party, but by the establishment who don't want a guy that they can't control. And because of all the lawfare that's happened with Trump, all the accusations and attacks that happened to Trump, I can see that the average voter who is a non-prop voter, the ones who voted early, who don't know all this political stuff, who don't have all this split ticket mindset because they've only voted. The only people who are going to be doing the split ticket voting are the ones who are high prop. And we know where they're going to go. So that's why the margin has to be so much higher to account for the ones who are low to no prop. Those are the ones that can put him over the top. Especially when you consider the hurricane relief effort that Mark was in. He was everywhere. And he was sincere. And you could tell he was sincere. He worked his butt off. And I didn't see Stein doing anything. So that's another element there as well. So here we have the straight ticket effect. I mentioned that here as well. The Coattail effect could possibly provide Robinson with an additional 1.3 point boost, especially if Trump wins North Carolina decisively. Exactly. And so I mentioned this. You saw this what Seth and the On Point guy talked about. So I won't rehash that. And so where it stands currently as of today, election day, despite Stein's apparent lead in the polls, Mark Robinson's position may be stronger than it appears. The combination of Republican early voting turnout exceeding 2020 levels, incredible. You understand how huge that is. Potential polling inaccuracies similar to the 2020 race. By the way, that 9 was much lower than what it was before. I think Rasmussen had him at 14. So that was a 5-point bump from the last one. So, I mean, if I'm on Mark Robinson's campaign right now, I would be optimistic and just hoping for Trump to run these numbers up because Trump was everywhere in North Carolina. He was in Kinston, North Carolina. That's on the east. He was in Greensboro twice. He was in, I believe, was he in Charlotte? He was in Charlotte. He was in Gastonia, Charlotte, the same sort of area. He was in Asheboro. I went to that one. He's been all over North Carolina. He's went to Winston-Salem too. I think he was there. So he's been everywhere. And that's going to help Mark. Now, unfortunately, I don't think he was on stage with him much, but that would be something that would have helped him, I would think. I just think, it is what it is. I don't have an explanation there, but the point is he's got a shot and it's much better than it looks. The polling is way off, especially in North Carolina, because if you're looking at party affiliation, that means nothing because like Seth said, people in North Carolina who are Democrats still vote Republican. They just never took the time to change their ballot affiliation. So lastly, if Trump wins North Carolina by a solid margin, the down ballot effect could make the race one of the most closely contested in the country. Every vote will matter as the outcome hinges on these dynamic and interlinked factors. If everything goes Mark's way, he's going to win. Simple as that. So, and if they hadn't pulled that dirty trick on him, he would have won this North Carolina by 2 points. Easy. He was going to win it. He was going to win it. And they knew it. They knew it. And they couldn't have this guy in here that they can't control. That's not my opinion. Look at my articles out there. I document that. I think Rich Barris mentioned the same thing. In fact, that's where I got it from. So anyway, guys, that's it for this live stream. I think I've covered everything. If there's any comments in here, I'll answer them now. Let's see. So Bit Bandit says, I'm going to go for a jog tomorrow and check out the poll stations to get about. Yeah, I do that a lot. In fact, I did that in 2020. I went to the polls and saw that no one showed up no one showed up at the polls in 2020. Where's it 2020? Was it 2016? Whatever it was, but no one showed up. And so I might do the same thing. One more thing, guys. Do not watch the exit polls. They're going to try and demoralize you because they know you get off work late and you're going to go to the polls. If they think Harris is at 15, maybe maybe those crazy MAGA supporters, those white supremacists, maybe they won't show up. But they don't understand that we will walk on crawl on miles of glass. I would crawl through miles of glass on my knees to vote for this man. I would. I absolutely would. And I've been to 2 Trump rallies this year. Or was it 3? It was the 3 this year. I went to the one in Butler, Asheboro. I get Asheville mixed up. Asheboro, Butler, Pennsylvania, the second one. And just yesterday I went, what was it? Where was I? That's embarrassing. Oh, Salem, Virginia. And you have to stand in line for 12 hours. It's a 12-hour day. You go to a Trump rally and you want to be inside near the stage, anywhere near the stage, it's going to be 12 hours. It's going to be a 12-hour day because you have to get there at least 8 hours prior. And then you're going to have to, go through the event, which is going to be at least another 3 or 4 hours. And there's your 12 hours. So, and if you have to drive back, it could be even longer. So, yeah. And my point is that we're being conditioned to stand in line. We don't care. People were camped out at Salem, Virginia. Camped out. I got there at 4:47 in the morning. I was actually good at our Instagram. I have a video on Instagram. Go check out. You see the links below. Go there. And I was there at 4:47 in the morning. And I was still the 12th, 13th car in line. And some people who were experts, like the guy behind me, was at his 37th Trump rally. So he already knew. He was there like the night before. He put his chairs up behind the gate. So I was like, wow, you guys are hardcore. I've only been to 7. So we're conditioned to stand in line and wait and do what we have to do. So we're going to show up and it's going to be awesome. And minus those choke points I mentioned before, most of them are speculative. We're going to take this thing. It's going to be exciting. And I'm going to do another show about that. I'll probably bring my team on and talk about it. So give you an idea what's going to happen tomorrow for the live stream. Let me see. I'm going to kick off probably about 7 o'clock when the polls start to close. I'm going to be broadcasting with, let me go to my Twitter and let me just pull that up. And let's just take a look. So I'm going to go to Larry Schreikart's page first. Oops, don't do that. I did last time. This is what I want to do. Bam. All right, cool. Let me close some stuff out. I get confused. All right, I think I lost mine. I went too far. Let me reshare my screen. All right, cool. I go Larry's page. There it is. All right, so this is where we're going to be, and he may have his link up already. All right, so this is new. So that's probably like X so much is. So Eric Daughtry, if you want to know anything about the election, follow this dude. He shows every poll, no matter how dumb they are, or how weird they are, or how bad they are. He'll post it. So Eric Daughtry, I would definitely check him out. If you don't go to any pollster or on X, follow this guy. He gives everything. So here he says, election eve update. This is a huge discrepancy between Democrats and Republicans right now. Percent of total 2020 vote are in. Wow. Holy crap. Yeah, like I said before. So that's, yeah. So like I said, wow. This is even better than I thought. So, okay. So before I was saying, yeah, we're nearing the 2020 numbers. Well, North Carolina, we surpassed them. In Arizona, we surpassed them. In Nevada, we're only within like 8 points of surpassing them. And Pennsylvania, we're like 2.5 points from surpassing 2020. And I'm telling you, this is what's happening, guys. I'm telling you, this is my gut. I don't have any numbers on this. I can't base this on anything. But this is what I think was happening. I just think that 20% number that I mentioned before of white men who are anywhere in the country who are working class, under 50, non-churched, are going for Trump by 20%. That's what those numbers were. And same thing with black people who are black men or black men. This is black men. These are white men and black men, working class, under 50, in a highly concentrated urban area like a DC, well, even like a DC or Chicago or Detroit, Baltimore, Philadelphia in particular. You know, those guys are also going for Trump at 20%. And I think that's what we're having here. That's where we're having these numbers. That's why these early voting numbers are coming with low propers, and why we're still going to have gas in the tank. Because these people who voted for, the same people who voted early last time for Biden are doing the same thing. They're just doing it for Trump now. And that's why these numbers like that. It's across the board everywhere. That's what's got to be happening. All right. So anyway, let's keep going. He's posting some stuff here. He hasn't put stuff up yet. All right. So anyway, I'm just trying to find the link, guys. Maybe it doesn't matter. It will. Nope, it won't show up there. Oh yeah, it did show up there. No, it didn't. All right. So I guess what was I gonna do? Okay, I was gonna talk about the live stream, so I'll continue on that. So I can't find the link on Rumble yet. He didn't post it yet. Maybe he did. Hold on. The Libertarian Party of New Hampshire endorses Trump. Oh, here we go. All right, so here's the link to that particular show. So this is, so he won't have it until the next day or today later. Should be up soon. But this is who he's going to have on the program. And so similarly, I have scheduled tomorrow, I have Kira Bowlby. She's been a regular on this show, the Kyle Slick show, and also on that live Friday night show for many years now. She's out in New Mexico. She committed to be on. We have Marty Nalitz. He won't be live. He submitted a video that I'll play. He's in Pennsylvania. We have Nicole in Florida. I'm not sure if she's available. I'll see if Nicole will help us out in Florida. And we have my friend Joe in Oregon. She also is going to come on. And my buddy Ethan, who is in England, he will come on as well. So New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Florida, Oregon, and Ethan in UK will come on. And I'll see if I can get some more. I'd like to get a Florida one on. Maybe Callie from Callie Fontanalia, if she's available, or Josh, her husband. Would be great to have one from Florida. And we just have a good time. And hopefully we'll take this thing. And it will be only on Rumble because I want to make sure that I can say what I want to say. It'll be on Rumble and X, and that's it. And if I have to break it up and put it on YouTube, once all things said and done, I will. But I don't want to feel like I'm censoring myself on live. It's just something I don't want to have to do because anyway. So that's going to be it for that. And I want to thank everyone for coming on. And I'm going to go through the list like I normally do. And thank those that came on. Rosie with Thorns, thank you for coming on. Clue, thank you for your comments about Joe Rogan. Stephen B, hadn't heard from you in a while. Let's get up soon, man. Yep, I think he can get through 320. I talked about that, about how that can happen. Basically, carrying Michigan and carrying Virginia would do it. Low key selection, Bry Camp, Nicholas Little, LSHD, Trump has it. Mark Jackson, as always, you're the man. A. Daniels and John. He said, I didn't think I put this on the screen. He said, we got to vote. We got to vote. And Bit Bandit, thank you guys for coming on. Now, again, I'm going to stay on here. I'm going to go over to Rumble. I'm going to take a 5-minute break. I'm going to turn off everything except for Rumble and X, for that matter. X will be there as well. So I'll just go over my thought of integrity real quickly, and then that will be the end of it. So thank you guys so much for coming on. And this is the Kyle Sugg Show. My name is Kyle. Thank you for hanging out with us this entire night. It's about 3.5 hours of live stream coverage. Tomorrow will be at least that much. Hope it's not a long night, guys. I really do hope it's not a long night, but we shall see. It should be interesting. A lot of pins and needles, but just remember that we have all of the polling on our side. We have the early voting data on our side. We have the voting tendencies on our side, and we also have the fact that we have the voter enthusiasm on our side as well. And yeah, and the voter registration and the identification trends from Gallup are very, very accurate in terms of determining the election. So, guys, again, thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Stick around on Rumble for 5 minutes, and I will talk to you a little bit about voter integrity and what my thoughts there. Until then, guys, see you next time.